been made to this budget. A Smart Youth program has been a significant increase from 60 million to 25 million. Our efforts are being recognized. Madam Speaker, despite all effort to support our young people with various projects and programs, yet we must concede that these same young people in Mauritius and around the world alike are exposed to an evil that is corroding our society, that is drugs. No nation, however developed, is immune from this threat. Drugs destroy life. It tears family apart. It undermines communities, and it compromising the future of our youth. In Mauritius, the issue of drug proliferation is not new. The fight against it requires collective effort, irrespective of political affiliation. Without turning this debate into a political issue, Madam Speaker, history will nevertheless recall that whenever the MSM has been in power, drug trafficking has been a thriving business. Need, I point out the Tractopelle saga, where 1.6 billion worth of drugs was discovered in a Tractopelle in 2022. Should I also remind the House of l'épisode Bonbon Gaz in 2017, where roughly 2 billion worth of drugs were discovered in gas cylinders? How can I leave out the well-documented case of that famous drug lord currently serving his sentence in Réunion Island, but who in Mauritius enjoyed almost absolute immunity? Madam Speaker, the list is quite long, but it is an undeniable fact that the upsurge in drug proliferation become very palpable in Mauritius since last 10 years. But while on the one hand we had an exponential proliferation of drugs, on the other hand, the same MSM government was dismantling the NATRESA. Through its action, the MSM government demonstrated to us where its interests lie. On our side, as soon as we assumed office, we made the fight against drugs as one of our foremost priority. To make up for the dismantling of NATRESA, this government established the National Agency for Drug Control, which recently released a drug control master plan. Action speaks louder than words, Madam Speaker. In parallel, the National Drug Control Commission has been set up under the chairmanship of none other than the Honorable Prime Minister himself. This is not merely symbolic, it is a formal pledge. The NDCC bring together 11 ministers whose portfolio are directly concerned with the multifaceted challenges posed by drug abuse and illicit trafficking. This top-level commitment demonstrates that the fight against drug transcends individual ministries and required concerted action in prevention, treatment, rehabilitation, law enforcement, education, youth development, and social integration. As a contribution towards this collective effort, my ministry integrated substance abuse awareness into the National Youth Civic Service Program and other numerous youth development initiatives. Furthermore, the organization of La Course de l'Unité, an island-wide marathon involving all local authorities under the theme Mauriciens mobilisés contre la drogue, sent a powerful message that the fight against drugs is a matter of national concern. I'm pleased to announce that a second edition of that coup de l'unité, even more spectacular than the first one, is underway. Madam Speaker, I also note that provision of 2 million has been made under my ministerial budget allocation to support our efforts in the fight against drugs. At this stage, I cannot fail to mention the Prime Minister's interest in this pressing issue namely drugs. The allocation of 2 million rupees to all ministries as part of a national initiative to combat drugs is well inspired. This important measure is a strong testimony to the government's unwavering commitment to combating the scourge of drugs and protecting our communities, particularly our youth, from its devastating consequences. Madam Speaker, sports is an essential component of the fight against drugs. It is precisely in this context that I so warmly welcome and commend the bold measure aimed at waiving payment for the use of public sports infrastructure. Our promise to the population is becoming a reality. This measure will certainly help us in our fight against drugs. I sincerely hope that our citizens, especially our youth, will seize this opportunity with a strong sense of responsibility and make full and meaningful use of these facilities. Madam Speaker, on a separate note, allow me at this point to go back to November 2024. We secure a historic electoral mandate with an overwhelming victory of 60-0. In the aftermath of such a resounding success, it would have been easy for this government, headed by the Honourable Prime Minister, to pursue the path of widespread popularity, as many leaders elsewhere might have been tempted to do. Yet, what stands out above all the courage and sense of responsibility demonstrated by the Honourable Prime Minister, I was working with my officers only a few days ago, and the determination he has shown in the face of difficult circumstances. Despite the odds, he has proved himself brave enough to take bold and necessary decisions. The population may find some of them difficult to accept, but these decisions have been conceived with a larger purpose in mind, safeguarding the interests of future generations. In doing so, he has displayed true statesmanship. The Prime Minister understands that the responsibility of leadership extends beyond immediate political gain. It is about laying strong foundation, undertaking reform where they are needed most, and leaving behind a legacy that fosters sustainable prosperity. Madam Speaker, coming back to the budget, I must stress that since our coming in office, the sports sector has witnessed remarkable progress. In fact, we have ushered Mauritius in an era of historical success. The result we achieved, either at continental or international level, speak for themselves. At the CGSOE Games in Seychelles, Mauritius won an impressive 150 medals, of which 35 gold medals. At the African Youth Game in Angola, we secured 18 medals. The exceptional performance of Kimberly Lecour-Debieux elevated Mauritius onto the global cycling map. Similarly, the performance of our para-athletes internationally deserve our commendation. As a just recognition, Kimberly and Giovanni Philippe were given national awards. The high-level sport assistance scheme has enabled my ministry to extend financial support of around 15 million to 100 elite athletes and para-athletes. Moreover, an amount of 9.4 million has been paid from the cash prize scheme to reward outstanding international performances. Madam Speaker, the 2026-27 budget provides 65 million as allocation to National Sport Federation and 110 million for various items, including preparation for the Indian Ocean Island Game 2027 and other major regional, continental and international sport events. 90 million rupees for the development of sport for all around the island and 127 million for the Mauritius Sport Council. These allocations as much more than financial commitment. They are investment in our athletes, in national pride, and in the aspiration of a generation of young Mauritians who dream of representing their country with honor, distinction on the international stage. Apprehensions have been raised earlier today in this House as regards funding of our athlete participation in international events. I must reassure the House that adequate provision have been made in my ministry's budget to cover such expenses. I also note with regret that this government commitment and ambition regarding the development of sport have been called into question in this House. A more objective analysis would have led to a different conclusion. The results, both at local and international level, are unequivocal. But Madam Speaker, what can we do? Il n'est pas aveugle, c'est que celui qui ne veut pas voir. Madam Speaker, the sporting landscape is set to undergo major changes in the near future with the introduction of a transformating bill, namely the Sport Governance Bill. I take this opportunity to state in no uncertain terms that it will constitute a landmark piece of legislation for the modernization, regulation, and strengthening of sport ecosystem in the Republic of Mauritius. It will ensure that sport organizations operate within a clear professional and merit-based framework that protects athletes and restores public confidence. Like it or not, the direction is irreversible. Sport in Mauritius must be governed with integrity, professionalism, and accountability. Madam Speaker, as Minister of Youth and Sport, I am resolutely determined to commit to clean up the sports sector. Come what may, malpractices and mafia will not find their way in the field of sport. The various stakeholders concerned and the general public can rely on me to wage a relentless fight against anything like to undermine the image of sport in Mauritius, whatever some may say. And I will always be on the battlefield to fight the mafia and other reprehensible acts and practices. My record has been speak volume about my commitment to reform and to defend the highest ethical standard in sport administration. Over the past 18 months, decisive action has been taken to restore order, improve governance, and place athletes and youth at the center of the system. I will continue on the path with firmness, clarity, and responsibility in the best interest of the country and the youth in particular. Madam Speaker, football remains the most popular sport among our youth, and this government is investing heavily in the development. At the level of my ministry, some of 14 million has been allocated with a view to supporting football clubs. On the other hand, 12 regional football training centers, 47 écoles de foot, and 41 grassroots football centers are fully operational around the country. More significant, the National Football Centre of Excellence was launched in July 2025 at Côte d'Or, bringing together the country's most promising young footballers. Meaningful progress has been achieved, and soon we will be showcasing our achievement. We have the target, and that is obtaining a qualification for the Under-17 World Cup. I firmly believe that this is within our reach, and we are working towards. Similarly, many Mauritian football fans, and rightly so, ask a justified question: will Mauritius one day qualify for a continental championship or even the FIFA World Cup like Curacao or Cape Verde? We share this aspiration and ambition. We believe that Mauritius possesses the talent, the determination, and the potential to compete at the highest level. In line with international best practices, my ministry is presently working on a policy framework that would enable us to tap into the immense reservoir of talent within our diaspora. Once this policy is finalized and implemented, Mauritian born and living abroad will meet the eligible criteria, will have the opportunity to represent their country of origin and strengthen our national team. However, this will not be done at the expense of our local sportsmen and sportswomen. Madam Speaker, no sport policy can secure without quality infrastructure. This government is investing significantly in upgrading and modernizing sport facilities across the country. Despite our difficult economic condition, funds have still been allocated to the renovation and maintenance of those facilities. In this budget, as well, an amount of 100 million has been provided for the renovation and upgrading of 5 major sport infrastructure. Similarly, an initial provision of 80 million have been made in this year's budget for the construction of 2 additional swimming pools, one at Triolet and one at Flac. Over the last years, a major achievement was the inauguration of the South-East Sagor Ramglam complex at Triolet, representing an investment of approximately 200,000 million and creating a new sport hub in the north of the country. I'm also delighted to note that the provision of 20 million has been made for the setting up additional center of excellence in Côte d'Or. 2 are already operational. 1 more for swimming is in the pipeline. Let me highlight that at the Côte d'Or National Sport Complex, 20,000 users every month are benefiting from one and the most modern sport complexes in the African region under the guidance of my good friend Michael Glover. Madam Speaker, the future belongs to nations that invest in their people. Our upcoming priorities include the introduction of a new sport bill, as I mentioned out earlier, enhanced preparation for the 2027 Indian Ocean Island Games, expansion of the Kids in Africa program in primary school, continued support to elite athletes, strengthened action against drugs, further decentralization of youth and sport devices. Madam Speaker, I would like to emphasize my commitment to Rodrigue. Since I've taken office, recognizing that Rodrigue is an integral part of the Republic of Mauritius, and recognizing too that it is brimming with talents, whether in sport or among its young people. I have made it my duty to give a special consideration to our sisters and brothers in Rodrigue. During the coming financial year, we will continue to work with the Rodrigue Regional Administration to serve sporting and youth communities in Rodrigue. This budget gives us the means to continue the journey. At a time of critical economic condition, the budgetary provision of my ministry has seen a sizable increase of 12% compared to last year. This demonstrates that even in difficult economic circumstances, a responsible government can continue investing in the future, because youth are not an expenditure, they are an investment. Sports are not a cost, they are a nation-building tool, and hope is not a luxury, it is the foundation of progress. But Madam Speaker, on a personal note, I would like to state that throughout my political career, I have always placed the country interests at the center of my decision, while remaining steadfastly loyal to the principles and values to my party has always embodied. But March 2026 was the darkest period I have ever experienced. At that time, I had 2 choices: to walk away or to defend the interests of the people who have massively voted for us. Madam Speaker, behind our every vote casted in favor lies a profound trust, a hope, a better life, and an expectation of greater integrity in the management of state affairs. Would have been wise of me to evade from my responsibility and break this bond of trust between myself and the people. After careful consideration, I choose the path of responsibility. I choose to stay to support the Prime Minister. I choose to serve my country. At this stage, I must express my deep gratitude and appreciation to the electorate of my conscience, Stanley Rosing, without whom I would not have been here addressing this August Assembly. This electorate, Madam Speaker, elected me on 3 occasions, and I would like to tell them today, in the most solemn manner, that I will never let them down. I will always be there for them, come what may, and the development of my constituency is very close to my heart. Madam Speaker, and I wish to address myself directly to the population. We have been brought to power through an overwhelming victory. Expectations are logically high, but the population must not lose sight of the fact that we inherited a country in distress. Economic indicators were flashing red. Public finances were under severe strain, with an unsustainable level of public debt. Confidence in our institution was seriously eroded, with a system increasingly perceived as being driven by political favoritism and nepotism. Allegations of unlawful and surveillance decisions, arbitrary arrests, growing concern regarding the state of our democratic institution, and the last but not least, the attempt restriction of access to social media in November 2024. Steering the country back on the right course requires both courage and vision. The right decisions are not always the easiest or the most popular in the short term, but they may prove to be the most beneficial for our children and future generations. Madam Speaker, very often people tend to forget easily, but how can we, in the case of the MSM regime, forget about the multiple scandals we have played their term of office over the last 10 years? Today, some of the very same individuals who presided over the period to seek to lecture this government and present themselves once again as an alternative for the future. Madame la Présidente, hier, je me suis fait un devoir de suivre la conférence de presse de l'ex-premier ministre, le leader du MSM, M. Pravin Kumar Jagnnath, celui-là même qui a dirigé le pays pendant près de 7 ans, soit de janvier 2017 à novembre 2024. Le gouffre financier et économique dans lequel le pays se trouve aujourd'hui pose ses empreintes. Sa gestion calamiteuse des affaires de l'État lui a valu d'ailleurs l'une des plus lourdes défaites qu'un leader politique n'ait jamais subi dans notre histoire récente. Ce que je retiens vivement de mon intervention, c'est cette insinuation selon laquelle nos aînés constituent un fardeau pour ce gouvernement. Rien de plus faux, Madame la Présidente. Les intérêts et le bien-être de nos aînés figurent parmi les principales préoccupations de ce gouvernement. Nous leur devons notre profond respect et gratitude pour leur contribution inestimable et l'édification d'une île Maurice moderne. Fardeau, dit-il, ai-je bien entendu, Madame la Présidente? Voici les vrais fardeaux, Madame la Présidente. Fardeau, c'est un pays quasi banqueroute, affichant une dette publique insoutenable qu'il nous a été légué. Fardeau, c'est l'argent des contribuables généreusement accordé à des proches du MSM, comme des millions du MIC à Maradiva. Fardeau, c'est la violation sans scrupule de la démocratie, particulièrement la démocratie parlementaire, avec des expulsions arbitraires à l'appel. Aujourd'hui, ces mêmes personnes se muent dans la peau d'un sauveur et souhaite diriger le pays à nouveau. Madam Speaker, my appeal to the population is simple and it's straightforward. Never, never allow the same snake to bite you twice. No matter how many times a snake shed its skin, it will always be a snake. I'm done, Madam Speaker.
Very well. Yes, Honourable Mr. Jitan, Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I would like to commend the Honourable Prime Minister for presenting another responsible budget. Instead of being guided by short-term political calculations, he has chosen bold and visionary leadership, taking the difficult but necessary decisions that safeguard the present while people tell you that you should not talk about legacy 18 months into the mandate. They say people have voted you to restore and you should not be blaming others anymore. But at the same time, it is important to remember the context and the magnitude of the mess that we are in. Imagine this country when we came to office, the legacy that was left to us. Honorable Jaman said it in his speech the other day. A mess of 10 years cannot be repaired in 18 months, Madam Speaker. I think it is important for us to remember why we are where we are and what are the choices to get us to where we want to be. I will talk later about what we are doing to repair the damage done to our society, to our economy, to our people. The previous regime left us with a legacy of economic mismanagement, institutional rot, deteriorating economic indicators, a path of unsustainability. We were on the cliff edge, Madam Speaker, yes, au bord de la précipice. And Honorable Asiyavadan just now mentioned so many big mismanagements, Silverbank, MIC. Let me add a few more. Betamax, 6 billion rupees of mess that they left. BAIE, who will forget BAIE, the billions mismanaged, the thousands of people whose lives were wrecked through their mismanagement. Let's not forget that ever. The people chose us to restore order, to restore economic discipline, to restore hope. The previous regime's choice was clear. Live for today. Spend more than you earn. Consume instead of invest. Live like there is no tomorrow. Ensure that you and your cronies get rich, obscenely rich. The legacy of the previous regime was there for all of us to see. A budget deficit of 9.3% and a debt close to 90% of GDP. And what do we have to show for that debt? Economic imbalances, a wider current account deficit, forex constraint, higher interest bills. Today, debt servicing, and the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned that earlier this morning. Debt servicing is the second biggest item in the budget. 27 billion that could have gone toward education, towards healthcare, towards better local services, towards social housing. So when people say stop criticizing the previous regime, they need to understand the legacy. The legacy is not an excuse. It is the invisible noose around the neck of every citizen. La corde autour du cou de chaque citoyen, Madam Speaker. The pressure of that legacy is felt every day by our families, our businesses, and our public finances. And you know, Madam Speaker, every week in Cabinet, ministers say, oh, Prime Minister, we have sent this to Minister of Finance, we need funds. And every week he says there is no money. It is the same like a household, there is no money, and the population, and we all need to understand that. And this is why precisely this government has chosen a different path. Not the path of populism as many are undertaking on radio and social media with cheap rhetoric. Not the path of short-term political convenience, but the path of responsibility, the path of reform, the path of restoring economic stability so that future generations inherit opportunity, not debt. Prosperity, not fragility. Hope, not burdens. Madam Speaker, last year's budget was about ensuring we did not go over the cliff. It was about restoring economic sustainability. It was about building institutional credibility. It was what the country needed. In future, when we look back, this will be the moment seen as a turning point in the history of our country. The budget, when we chose to stop the rot, to build resilience, its philosophy is clear: address immediate priorities while preparing for a more secure and resilient future. There are still many difficult choices ahead. Let's make no mistake about that. The backdrop to the budget was a complex one. On top of the inherited legacy that I just mentioned, and most of my colleagues mentioned, the Iran war caused disruptions across multiple dimensions: higher oil prices, higher freight and insurance prices, higher global inflation, higher domestic inflation. We could have let these shocks derail our economic agenda. We chose to stay the course while supporting the population. Honorable Minister Sikyan has been working relentlessly to help with the cost of living crisis. Notwithstanding the added spending pressure, budget deficit has been reduced from 9.3% we inherited to 6% of GDP. The proposed budget aims to bring it to 3.7% of GDP. But now that was before the freezing of the pension reform. If we want to reduce the debt and interest bill, we need restraint. We need to make difficult choices. The restraint is also calling for collective responsibility. The budget has a dose of progressivity, and the review of the tax system will be an opportunity to address any perceived undue burden. At the end of the day, we want to ensure we do not tax effort and our jurisdiction remains competitive. Madam Speaker, allow me to say a few words on the pension reform, which has been like the elephant in the room since last week. No one in this assembly or in this country will question, will put in doubt that our pension system is unsustainable and needs to be reformed. Pension reform is vital. And we should not deny that some form of targeting is the way forward. We have been talking about that for years now, and the Prime Minister said that earlier today. The debate is on just how to reform it. It is a very, very sensitive subject. We are sitting on a ticking demographic time bomb. Our population is aging. Our population is also shrinking. We are spending close to 8% of GDP on basic retirement pension. And needless to say that Friday's budget contains largely positive measures, but it has upset people on the issue of pension reform. We all know a family member, a friend, a neighbor who is retired primary school teacher, a policeman, a private sector employee, and they say they have worked for 30, 40, 45 years. and they are getting a work pension of 25,000 or 30,000 rupees. And so they needed that BRP to live a decent and modest life. We could not put the burden on our elderlies and take away money from their pocket to balance our budget deficit. Yesterday, Honorable Amir Mia made a very compelling and passionate speech on how we dealt with this issue in MMM as a responsible partner in this government. We do not dissent in public, Madam Speaker. We do not go on radio or on social media to criticize and distance ourselves from this situation. We are one team. We respect discipline that we have. We are in a government. Il faut assumer when you are in government. And we must put on record the openness with which the Prime Minister acknowledged this and met us. The team spirit and the collaboration of all our colleagues and partners to put our heads together and find a solution. And so I'm deeply grateful to the Prime Minister for his bold decision to freeze the measure. You heard the voice of the people. You chose the path of righteousness, Prime Minister. So on behalf of the people of this country, we say a million thanks to you. But the population, we must also warn. There are fiscal arithmetics. Just like families have a budget to balance, the Minister of Finance also has a country's budget to balance. There are tough choices to be made to balance the budget. And we must remember that there is no such thing as a free lunch. Madam Speaker, I will now turn to measures directly relevant to my ministry. Financial services and economic planning. Financial services, Madam Speaker, is one of the largest pillars of our economy. It contributes to 12.4% of GDP, employs over 20,000 highly skilled professionals, and it is by far the largest tax contributor, be it in terms of corporate tax or PAYE. On the other hand, the ministry has one of the lowest budgets of any ministry, 352 million rupees. That includes the budget of Office for Public Sector Governance, the budget for AML-CFT, the budget for Financial Services Unit, the budget for FIU, the budget for Financial Services Institute, and the budget for economic planning, which is 30 million. Every year, we review my ministry's budget line by line to ensure no hidden fats or inefficiencies. Maybe this is a default from private sector. We analyze our budgets line by line. And I've told my team we need to do more with less. We should not ask for more money. We must try to do with what we have. And a smaller budget does not mean lower results. Last year, 19 budget measures were announced relating to my ministry. All but one have been completed or will be completed by the end of this month. So when people say we are doing nothing, let me remind them that they are real achievements, not just in my ministry, but in every ministry, Madam Speaker. And we must acknowledge that. And we do not stick to budget measures alone. We are delivering on the financial services strategy. And let me give you a few deliverables for the outgoing fiscal year. The AML-CFT Act 2026 that we brought to Parliament, amending not less than 24 pieces of legislation for preparedness and readiness of the forthcoming Islamlag mutual evaluation. Africa Credit Rating Agency, we won the bid to host AFCRA in Mauritius. And right now there's a team working currently in Mauritius from AFCRA to work on the operationalization of the project. National FinTech Strategy, a major milestone, was launched this very morning. This will be a game changer for our economy, opening an ocean of opportunities for our youth and our entrepreneurs. geopolitical response, rapid execution in times of crisis. In response to the flight of global capital flows arising from tensions in the Middle East, the Ministry developed a package of measures validated in April. It is already showing signs of positive outcomes. GFCI Index, we improve our global ranking by 8 places in 1 year. International outreach, despite having no dedicated agency for promotion of the sector, we raised the profile of the MIFC through dozens of top media outlets in India, in UK, in UAE, and in Africa. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister launched the National Consultations for Vision 2050 in December 2025. We undertook by far the largest public consultation undertaken in this country for a project of this nature. We engaged with more than 2,000 people up and down this country through 12 regional consultations covering all districts and municipalities. We conducted 21 sectoral consultations, a dedicated consultation with trade unions, and we received 72 online submissions. These are some of the realizations of last year. So for those who keep on saying we are doing nothing, these are some very concrete achievements and deliverables. We are executing the financial services strategy with determination and conviction, and I'm pleased that this budget supports our strategy. It will strengthen Mauritius as a competitive, innovative, and trusted IFC while positioning the jurisdiction for the next generation of digital finance and fintech. The push for AI will support our advances in fintech and broader economic diversification. The National AI Platform will help us develop local AI capabilities, foster innovation, and equip the workforce with skills required for emerging sectors. The push for startups will stimulate entrepreneurship, attract innovative businesses, and support the emergence of technology-driven fintech enterprises. Introducing clear rules for the issuance of an investment in stablecoins and the tokenization of real-world assets will position Mauritius at the forefront of digital finance. Madam Speaker, we are already fully engaged to ensure our readiness for the mutual evaluation in 2027. The proposed Bank of Mauritius Bill, the new banking bill, and the resolution regime will further strengthen our regulatory framework. The amendment will strengthen oversight across a range of sectors, including banking, cooperative credit unions, virtual asset service providers, and dealers in precious metals and stones, as well as Waqf and other legal arrangements. In the banking sector, amendments to the Banking Act will strengthen information sharing arrangements between financial institutions and the Financial Crime Commission. But as always, we need to balance compliance with ease of doing business. The Financial Services Institute, under the aegis of a newly appointed board and a newly appointed CEO, will soon be launching a national training program in the run-up of the mutual evaluation to ensure our institutions and stakeholders are fully cognizant of how to translate regulations into effectiveness. Madam Speaker, let me now turn to governance. Governance remains a cornerstone of an effective, transparent, and accountable public sector. The OPSG will undertake governance surveys and assessment for 4 ministries and departments in the coming financial year. In parallel, it will continue to provide guidance, awareness program, and capacity building initiatives to support ministries and departments in strengthening governance arrangements and fostering a culture of accountability, integrity, and continuous improvement. The OPSG will also monitor the effectiveness of audit committees and the implementation of governance recommendations across ministries and departments. This will help strengthen accountability, improve organizational performance, and ensure that public resources are managed efficiently, effectively, and in the best interest of citizens. Madam Speaker, let me now turn to economic planning. We have, at various points, noted the challenges we face as a country. An economic model that is running out of steam and the urgency of reinventing our traditional pillars, agriculture and manufacturing exports, as well as developing new growth pillars. A new world order characterized by greater uncertainty and shock, an aging and declining population, and rising climate vulnerabilities. Vision 2050 and the National Development Plan 2035 will articulate our strategies on how we navigate these challenges. Vision 2050 will be ready in August 2026, so in 2 months' time. During the consultations across the country, and I thank my colleagues who joined me in that conversations, we had the opportunity to hear the aspirations of our citizens, village councillors, municipal councillors, the youth, the students, CEOs, planters, fishermen, economic operators, senior citizens, women association. We listened to their hopes, their concerns, their priorities. And Madam Speaker, I also hear more often than once people saying, why are you focusing on long-term planning when we face immediate priorities? They often say, resolve our problems of today. You know, in 2050, you will not be here. Let me say this to them, and it reminds me of a recent event. I had the privilege to participate in a global summit in India earlier in the year, where the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, made a very compelling speech on Vikshit Bharat Abhiyan 2047. In fact, he had launched that initiative 10 years ago when he came to power in 2015. He was telling the audience the same narrative where people then were telling him, why do you worry about 2047? You will not be here in 2047. But see where India is today compared to 2015, 10 years down the road. And this is where I feel that this government, under the leadership of this Prime Minister, is looking at the long term, however difficult the current path may be. If we don't plan for the long term, we will still be firefighting 25 years down the road. What this budget shows is you can address immediate priorities and long-term planning simultaneously. They are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they are reinforcing. Let me take 4 broad themes from the budget and its alignment with Vision 2050. On growth and economic diversification, the broad-based approach spanning traditional and emerging sectors, sugar, fishing, manufacturing and exports, the blue economy, tourism, fintech, and startups through SMEs and fintech. Various infrastructure needed to unlock growth and well-being, water, electricity, renewables, port development. In this regard, we also welcome the Business Facilitation Bill to address bottlenecks and facilitate the ease of doing business, as well as the principle of silent agreement. In the context of the fiscal constraint, we need private investment. We need to make it easier for people to invest in the country to create jobs and opportunities. Secondly, on resilience to shock, we welcome the efforts to boost domestic food production through agriculture and fishing that will strengthen our value chain. We are helping small farmers. We are helping fishermen, people who are critical in providing our food. We owe it to them. On aging and migration, I congratulate the Prime Minister for restoring the age of retirement at 60 and giving people incentive for remaining in the job market for longer. This is a humane decision. It allows people who want to retire early to do so. It also allows people who want to work longer to do so. Given our demographic crisis, we can call it a crisis, we no longer have the luxury of allowing our talent to remain idle because of their age. If they are fit and willing, let's make it easier for them. I also welcome the comprehensive migration policy. Migration is an economic necessity. However, we must not forget the social imperative, how to balance migration with the integration of migrants in our communities. We need to plan ahead on this very important social issue. I also applaud the initiative to tap into the diaspora. I have interacted with many of them during the Vision 2050 consultation. They clearly want to help the country. On climate, we need to strengthen our resilience. I also welcome the urgent efforts aimed at preserving our beaches, our lagoons, and the biodiversity. Madam Speaker, before concluding, let me go back to Vision 2050 consultations. We heard the national cry for tackling the drugs issue across the island. We heard the calls for more safety in our towns and villages. We heard the calls for the youth for better infrastructure and more leisure across the country. We heard the fishermen from Grand Gobe to Black River. We heard the planters from Flac to Triolet to Kandiab. We heard the call for more economic opportunities. We heard the calls from town centers from Kuapip to Vakwa Phoenix to Catobon and Bobassa-Rosil. We heard the calls for preserving Port Louis. We heard the calls for protecting our lagoons and biodiversity at sea from our citizens and NGOs. And I cannot forget this lady who pleaded for the construction of Rivière des Anguilles Dam to be accelerated. The budget, Madam Speaker, already answers some of these calls, and we have more work to do, and we will deliver, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me, in conclusion, say this. Good plans and budgets are only as good as the execution. Implementation is what matters. And this is where our responsibility lies. Unless we are relentless about execution and delivery, we will not live up to the expectation of the people. And I must be honest, public administration is a very heavy and bureaucratic machinery. The system is mostly process-driven and not result-driven. In many ways, we are still operating the public administration system that we inherited back in 1968 from the British. This is a major constraint, and we will need to tackle that. It is the big elephant in the room, and we need to tackle that to be able to deliver more effectively and more efficiently. The public and the people expect us to deliver, and we will deliver come what may. We contain the rot, we will now rebuild. Rebuild for a more prosperous and secure future. Let's get to work. And before I end, Madam Speaker, allow me to express my deepest sense of gratitude to all my staff at the Ministry, to all my colleagues and fellow MPs, to my regional and colleagues in MMM, and to all my constituents. Thank you all for your support day in and day out in what has been a tough year on many counts. With this, Madam Speaker, I once again commend the Honourable Prime Minister for this bill and for his courage and the responsibility with which he has done this exercise, and I commend the bill to the House. Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, allow me at the very outset to clarify that I do not address this Assembly as an elected member. I hold my seat in this House by virtue of the Constitution alone, as Attorney General. Mine is therefore a constitutional office before it is anything else, and it is in that capacity that I propose to speak today. It is for that reason, Madam Speaker, that the House should not expect from me a political speech. The office I hold is that of legal advisor not only to government, but in real sense to this Assembly and to the state. And I conceive it to be my duty to address the budget not as an instrument of politics, but as an instrument of law, to speak to its legal architecture, to the legislative programme it sets in motion, and to the work of the office over which I have the honour to preside. I will accordingly confine my remarks to these matters. First, I propose to give the House an account of the work of the Attorney General's office during the financial year now drawing to a close, and what that work has meant for the administration of justice, for the quality of our legislation, and for the legal protection of the state and of the citizens of Mauritius. Secondly, Madam Speaker, I will set out, insofar as my office is concerned, what lies ahead in the fiscal year which we are about to enter, the legislative priorities, the reforms in contemplation, and the obligations, both domestic and international, that will fall to be discharged. A budget, Madam Speaker, is too often read as a ledger of money alone. But behind every measure announced stands a legal instrument that must be drafted, scrutinized, and made to withstand challenge. Behind every commitment of the state stands an obligation that must be lawful in its making and sound in its execution. It is less visible, but nonetheless an essential dimension of the nation's finances that I now turn to. Madam Speaker, I come first to the year now drawing to its close and to one of the most productive legislative sessions the House has known. More than 20 bills have come before this Assembly in the space of a single fiscal year, a programme conceived with purpose and pursued with resolve. Let me begin with justice. For too long, the ordinary litigant has had to navigate appeal procedures that were dispersed and frankly difficult to access. With the Criminal Appeal, Criminal Review Act and the Civil Appeal Act, we have undertaken the most significant modernization of our appellate system in a generation. These are not technical pieces of legislation for lawyers alone. They give every person, whether contesting a conviction or a civil judgment, a clearer, fairer, and more certain route to have their appeal considered. And in providing a proper mechanism for the review of convictions, we have built a safeguard against that greatest of failures, the conviction of the innocent. A justice system, Madam Speaker, that can correct its own errors is a system worthy of public trust. But we've gone further. Through the Courts Amendment Act, which brought about a new expedited procedure for judicial review proceedings, and the Court of Rodrigues Jurisdiction Amendment Act, bringing the children's cause to Rodrigue, we have strengthened the machinery of our courts and brought justice physically closer to our brothers and sisters in Rodrigues. With the Law Reform Commission Act, we have created a permanent engine of renewal so that the reform of our laws is no longer sporadic but continuous. A justice system, Madam Speaker, is only as strong as the profession that serves it. The Senior Counsel and Senior Attorney Act provides for the establishment of a recommendation panel presided over by the Chief Justice, which makes recommendations to the President of the Republic on the conferment of honorary distinctions to Senior Counsel and Senior Attorneys. The Law Practitioners Disciplinary Proceedings Act now establishes clear and credible standards of accountability, for public confidence in the law, Madam Speaker, depends upon confidence in those who practice it. The members of the Law Practitioners Disciplinary Proceedings Commission have been designated and appointed since the 1st of June 2026. And the citizen who simply seeks a fresh start in life, the Certificate of Character Act is the most consequential of all. By overhauling the framework for the issuing of criminal record certificates, We have removed unjust and lasting barriers to employment, and we have given real meaning to the principle of rehabilitation. This is what access to justice looks like in the daily life of an ordinary citizen. This Act, Madam Speaker, will come into force on the 1st of July 2026, together with the relevant regulations. The Financial Crimes Commission Amendment Act and the Comprehensive Anti-Money Laundering, Combating the Financing of Terrorism and Countering Proliferation Financing Act have reinforced our defences against financial crime and brought our framework into full alignment with the most exacting international standards. The reputation of Mauritius as a clean, credible jurisdiction is not an abstraction. It is the foundation upon which our financial services sector and tens of thousands of livelihoods depend. Madam Speaker, this government legislates not only for today, but for generations to come. The Atal Bihari Vajpayee Institute of Public Service and Innovation Act and the National Research and Innovation Institute Act represent a deliberate investment in human capital, in a modern public service, and in the innovation that will drive our economy forward. Now, nor have we neglected the everyday. The Police Amendment Act, the Road Traffic Amendment Act, and the Optical Council Amendment Act each bear directly upon the safety and well-being of our people, while the Rodrigues Regional Assembly Amendment Act deepens the autonomy of Rodrigues within our republic. Madam Speaker, this government has taken up the bold challenge of modernizing our constitution. Through the Constitutional Review Commission Act, we are setting up a commission that will hold inter alia public consultations on the issues that need to be reviewed and examined in our supreme law. Mind you, we've had hurdles to clear, last-minute hiccups to deal with, but we have ironed out the last creases. The appointment of the commissioners is, I'm told, imminent. Our Constitution has served us well since 1968. It remains the bedrock of our democracy. But a Constitution is not a monument to be admired from a distance. It is a living instrument, and after more than 5 decades, it must be reviewed to reflect how far our society has travelled and the realities of the Mauritius of today. The Constitutional Review Commission will give the people a voice in that process. It is, indeed, an act of confidence in our democracy. Madam Speaker, these bills taken together, these acts taken together, tell a single story. Justice and prosperity are not rivals. They reinforce one another. A nation cannot prosper without the rule of law, and the rule of law has absolutely no meaning if it does not reach the ordinary citizen in the conduct of his ordinary life. Madam Speaker, I now turn to the year ahead and to the legislative work presently being attended to by my office and across government. Now, taken together, these instruments represent one of the most substantial programs of legal reform undertaken in recent memory. They reach to the very architecture of our criminal justice system, to the integrity of our public institutions, to the protection of the vulnerable, and to the modernization of the law across a wide range of sectors. I propose to set them out by theme so that the House may appreciate not merely the volume of work, but the coherence of the design that underlies it. At the center of this program, Madam Speaker, stands the establishment of the National Crime Agency. This is not a single enactment, but an integrated suite of legislation deliberately conceived and as a coherent whole for the task of confronting serious organized and financial crime, because they cannot be met by piecemeal measures. The reform, Madam Speaker, will start with a Constitution Amendment Bill to secure the constitutional foundation upon which the new architecture is to rest. The National Crime Agency Bill itself will create the agency, define its mandate, and confer upon it the powers and the operational independence necessary to discharge it. Alongside it, the Independent Advisory Panel Bill will provide the institutional support for independent oversight of the agency so that the exercise of these considerable powers remains at all times subject to scrutiny and accountability. 3 further bills give the agency its substantive reach. The Financial Crime Bill will modernize and consolidate the law governing economic and financial offences. The Asset Recovery and Unexplained Wealth Bill will strengthen the capacity of the relevant investigative authorities to trace, freeze and recover the proceeds of crime, and will introduce the framework addressed to unexplained wealth, ensuring that those who cannot account for assets disproportionate to their lawful means may be required to do so. Now, the Criminal Justice Offenders Assisting Investigations and Prosecutions Bill will establish a clear statutory basis upon which offenders who provide genuine assistance to investigations and prosecutors may have that cooperation recognized, an instrument of proven value in dismantling criminal networks from within. To these are added the National Crime Agency Miscellaneous Provisions Bill, carrying the consequential and transitional amendments that so substantial a reform necessarily entails across the existing body of law. And because the establishment of a permanent architecture of this kind cannot be accomplished overnight, 2 interim instruments, the NCA Interim Agency Bill and the Secretariat of the Independent Advisory Interim Panel Bill, will ensure operational continuity and uninterrupted oversight whilst the permanent framework is brought fully into being. The National Prosecution Service Bill is next on our agenda after the NCA legislation and will provide a strengthened and clearly structured basis for the prosecution of offences with the DPP as the head of that National Prosecution Service. Together with the National Crime Agency package, these measures are intended to deliver a criminal justice system that is at once more capable and more accountable. Madam Speaker, the old Police and Criminal Justice Bill, which we have heard of for so long, has been reviewed, and it is now clear that the application of this bill in its present form will create more problems than it will solve. The idea now is to bring a new criminal justice bill which will cater inter alia for, first, the abolition of provisional charges as we know it today and replacing it by another system, but without doing away with the oversight of the courts. Secondly, the bringing about of a new process in the criminal justice system by introducing staged proceedings in court for serious and complex criminal ties. And thirdly, the bringing about of a new legal framework to cater for expedited hearings for minor criminal offences where the suspect has, during the course of the inquiry, admitted his guilt to the offence charged. All these, Madam Speaker, will by necessity require consultations with all the relevant stakeholders, including the judiciary, the office of the DPP, the police, and the independent bar. In a related vein of professional renewal, the Law Practitioners Amendment Bill will now aim at reforming the rules governing pupillage to the benefit of those entering the legal profession and of the standards of that profession as a whole. And again, this will entail consultations with the professions and the judiciary. Madam Speaker, I now turn from the architecture of enforcement to the substance of the criminal law itself. In the coming weeks, the criminal code amendments to the criminal code will be presented to the House to address 2 matters of the greatest social importance: marital rape and feminicide. By these reforms, the law will affirm, without equivocation, that a marital relationship confers no license for sexual violence, and that the killing of women on account of their gender is to be named, recognized, and punished for what it is. These are not technical amendments, Madam Speaker. They speak to the dignity and to the safety of women in our society, and they are long overdue. Madam Speaker, one of this government's defining commitments has been the restoration of Mauritius' democratic institutions. When we came into office, it was a moment when the independence of key bodies had been questioned and public confidence shaken. Rebuilding that confidence remains a priority, and today I turn to one of its clearest expressions, the reform of the National Human Rights Commission. The Protection of Human Rights Act is today 28 years old. Enacted in a different era, it no longer reflects the international standards by which such institutions are now measured. The Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions has set out clear expectations of us, and the Commission's full accreditation review falls due in 2027. It is very serious. Should we fail to act, our National Human Rights Commission risks being downgraded to B status, stripped of its voice and its vote at the international level. For a country so recently elected to the Human Rights Council, that would be a very serious blow. My office is therefore in the process of preparing the National Human Rights Commission bill, which the government intends to enact before the end of the year. This bill will establish a transparent, merit-based process for the appointment of commissioners with safeguards against arbitrary dismissal. It will remove the segment of police officers as investigators so that the Commission may inquire into misconduct without fear or favour. It will broaden the Commission's mandate, create a dedicated national preventive mechanism to inspect our places of detention and guarantee financial autonomy with direct reporting to this House. Madam Speaker, this reform is not simply a response to international pressure. It is a statement of values. Mauritius has shown in a single year that democratic regression can be reversed. The passage of this bill will show that such reversal can be deepened, consolidated, and made permanent. Madam Speaker, a number of other bills will modernize the law in particular sectors, such as health, consumer protection, hydrographic services, electronic communications, and child adoption. In the field of sport, the Governance of Sports Bill, together with the Mauritius Sports Council Bill and the Registrar of Sports Organisations Bill, will overhaul the governance of sporting bodies, providing for proper registration, oversight, and standards of administration across that sector. Public safety on our roads will also be addressed by further amendments to the Road Traffic Act, which will provide, amongst other measures, for the impounding of vehicles, which is a firm response to conduct that places the lives of road users at risk. But it will have always due regard to fundamental constitutional safeguards. Now, Madam Speaker, let me come to the measures announced in this budget. I would like to begin with two measures in the budget that fall squarely within my responsibility as guardian of this country's legal commitments: the extension of maternity leave to a full year and the introduction for the first time in our law of paid menstrual leave. Let me begin where an Attorney General usually begins, with the law. These measures, Madam Speaker, are not acts of generosity. They are the honouring of obligations that Mauritius freely assumed. We ratified the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women in 1984. We ratified the International Labour Organization's Maternity Protection Convention in 2019. Both require the state to protect maternity, and both make plain that to protect maternity is not to discriminate, but to prevent discrimination. By extending fully paid leave to 24 weeks from only 16 weeks, Mauritius does not strain against the international standard. It rises to the front rank of those who meet it. Madam Speaker, I have heard the objection that these protections will make employers reluctant to hire women. I answer this without hesitation. To refuse a woman work because she might one day become a mother is already unlawful in Mauritius. It offends the Equal Opportunities Act, it offends the Workers' Rights Act, and it offends the very conventions I have just named. Yesterday, the Equal Opportunities Commission reminded everyone in a communique of the provisions of the law. I can only agree with that statement because the law is clear, unambiguous, and direct. No one can discriminate against a woman who is pregnant or could potentially be pregnant. And on menstrual leave, Madam Speaker, let no one mistake what we are doing. To recognize that a woman in genuine, incapacitating pain should not have to choose between her health and her wages is not to call her a lesser worker. It is precisely what keeps her in work and on fair terms. It will, of course, rest on proper medical certification, and it will carry every safeguard against misuse. Madam Speaker, this House has already accepted in this very budget that we are an aging nation. We cannot ask the women of Mauritius, who are more than 50% of our population, both to sustain our economy as workers and to renew our population and offer them nothing in return, but the choice between the two. The experience of other nations tells us plainly what we should all know: where the state stands behind its families, families grow. Madam Speaker, the former Secretary General of the UN, Kofi Annan, once observed, and I quote, "When women thrive, all of society benefits, and succeeding generations are given a better start in life," unquote. These measures are not only lawful, they are necessary, they are just, and they are a testament of this government's firm purpose to put the people first. Madam Speaker, the second point relates to item 30 in the annex to the budget, which provides for amendments to the Banking Act, and these have raised some alarm in certain quarters. The aim of these amendments to Section 64 of the Banking Act is to correct anomalies which perdure since the repeal of the Asset Recovery Act and the promulgation of the Financial Crimes Commission Act in 2023. Section 64(3)(k) of the Banking Act, and I will try not to bore you to death here, under the confidentiality provisions currently provides that a financial institution is required to provide information in compliance with Section 48 or pursuant to an order made under the Asset Recovery Act. Now, not only is it the case that the Asset Recovery Act has been repealed since 2023, but the provisions are now entrenched in the FCC Act. And nothing is said about the reporting requirements under Section 25 of the UN Financial Prohibitions, Arms Embargo and Travel Ban Sanctions Act. The proposed amendments, Madam Speaker, seek simply to correct omissions, the omissions I've just mentioned, and to align the Banking Act with the provisions of Section 68A of the Financial Crimes Commission Act. Other amendments are also being brought. First, to clarify the linkage between Sections 64(9) and 64(10) of the Banking Act, following the ruling of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council in the Stanford Asset Holding and the Fraser Bank case in 2023. Second, to replace the words money laundering with financial crimes in Section 64(10)(b) of the Banking Act. And third, to provide a correction in Section 64(16), where the words Section 7(1)(c) should in fact read Section 17(1)(c). Taken together, these amendments remove legal uncertainty and harmonize the provisions of the Banking Act with those of the Financial Crimes Commission Act, reinforcing our anti-money laundering and asset recovery framework while preserving confidentiality in all cases not covered by this statutory exception. Madam Speaker, one of the most moving and inspiring speech this House heard this week is that of the Honourable Minister of Education and Human Resource. His speech, especially regarding bullying in all its form, must have resonated loud and clear in all the homes of this country. His cry from the heart has not gone unnoticed. I give this House the firm assurance that we shall work diligently to ensure that the proper legislation on anti-bullying is drafted and soon brought before the Assembly. Madam Speaker, I have also listened very carefully to the criticism from the other side of the House regarding artificial intelligence. And I say to the honourable members opposite, with respect, the whole world is moving towards AI. We may be a small nation of 1.2 million, but that does not mean we are timid. We cannot and we will not miss the train. Madam Speaker, to be as honest as the first member of Vacqua Floreal, AI is but a tool. And like every tool ever placed in human hands, from the printing press to the motor car, it carries the capacity to do great good, but if misused, to do real harm. The answer to that risk is not fear. The answer is law. The answer is a framework. That is precisely why this government will bring forward an AI guidelines legislation to ensure that AI is integrated in our society fully, but responsibly within the right legal framework. Now, on a lighter note, the honourable leader of the opposition told this House that one John Clark had called for AI to be suspended. You heard that? I must gently correct the honourable member. The gentleman's name is Jack Clark, not John Clark, co-founder of Anthropic. And he did not call for AI to be suspended. His point that the field today is all accelerator and no brake was a caution about the pace of development. It was an argument for guardrails, not for handbrake. In other words, Madam Speaker, the very man the opposition prayed in aid is making this government's case for us, that progress and prudence must travel together. And Madam Speaker, in my own office, we are not content to debate AI in the abstract. We are looking closely at how AI can help us deliver justice faster, to ease the burden of delay, to assist in the work of the law, and to give our citizens the timely justice to which they are entitled. Used wisely, with the proper safeguards, technology can be the ally of the rule of law, not its enemy. My office is busy setting up an interactive website to which every citizen will have easy access to all laws, all regulations, and all decisions of the Supreme Court for the last 150 years, and decisions of the Privy Council relevant to Mauritius. We approach it as a serious nation, Madam Speaker, ambitious enough to seize the opportunity and wise enough to build the brakes before we need them. Madam Speaker, concerns have been expressed regarding the heavier penalties proposed under the Public Gathering Act. And I understand why they are raised. The right to assemble lawfully, peacefully, and to make one's voice heard is a freedom guaranteed by our Constitution, the operative word being lawfully. One this House holds in common. The proposition is only to increase the sentence for an offence which already exists, nothing more. However, I give the assurance that these objections will be carried forward faithfully and placed before those responsible for settling the final form of this measure. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Junior Minister for Health has made an appeal to make drug testing compulsory for frontliners. I hear her, and on a personal level, I can only agree with the urgency of this matter. But let me go further, Madam Speaker. This cannot be about frontliners alone. Every one of us who shares the public space, the driver behind the wheel, you, me, us, the pedestrian crossing the road, me, you, us, the nurse, the doctor, the police officer, and yes, everyone is concerned. And let me be clear, Madam Speaker, this need not and must not trample on human rights. A test that is random, conducted with dignity, justified by public safety, and applied fairly to all within a proper legal framework is not an intrusion on liberty. It is the very condition of liberty. My freedom, your freedom to walk the street safely, a child's freedom to be treated by a doctor in full command of his senses, and of his faculties. These are rights too. A right exercised under the influence is not freedom. It is a danger to everyone around us. Madam Speaker, last but not least, the Chagos. Regarding the Chagos deal, let me briefly remind the House of the chronology, and I'm looking at the time, very sorry, I'm probably out of time.
You're just on time.
Thank you.
Give you a couple of minutes.
The ICJ delivered its advisory opinion on the 25th of February 2019, and the United Nations General Assembly voted on 22nd of May 2019. The UN General Assembly called upon the United Kingdom to complete the decolonization process within 6 months. 6 months, Madam Speaker, of the 22nd of May 2019. And you remember, the treaty was signed on the 22nd of May 2025. From the 22nd of May, 6 months to restore our sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago. That meant not later than 22nd of November 2019. However, the previous government could not even secure the opening of negotiations until November 2022. Negotiations that yielded no more than a political agreement in October 2024, and certainly not a final deal that could be signed off. We had to review this upon taking office. The deal was signed in May 2025, only 6 months later. Whether signed in January 2025 or later, it would still have had to go through the same legislative process in the UK Parliament, which, of course, remains beyond our control. The elected members of the House of Commons voted massively in favour, but the hurdles arose at a later stage in the House of Lords. The complicated relationship between the US President and Sir Keir Starmer delayed the exchange of notes in relation to the agreement of 1966. And this, likewise, was beyond our control. Madam Speaker, this is not a matter to be settled by lucky quick draw strikes, but by patience and diplomacy. The bill did not feature in the King's speech a few weeks ago for the next parliamentary session, but it remained listed on the UK Parliament website with a date for debate to be confirmed. The proof, Madam Speaker, lies in the chronology itself. The negotiations between Mauritius and the UK began in 2022 under a Conservative government, led first by Liz Truss and then by Rishi Sunak, before culminating in the agreement of the 22nd of May, concluded under the present Labour government. This is a commitment sustained across changes of leadership and across both of Britain's principal parties. I say principal parties perhaps at the relevant time. It is the commitment of a state, not of an individual, nor of a government of the moment. The proof of the pudding is, they say, in the eating. Only yesterday, the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, addressing the House of Commons Justice Select Committee, came out strongly in favour of the ratification of this treaty, and later his office issued a statement, and I quote, "The Attorney General was reflecting on the government's long-standing position, which is that the government remains committed to the agreement with Mauritius as the best way to safeguard the long-term future of the base, and continues to work closely with the US and Mauritius on the next steps. The government will bring the bill back to Parliament to be ratified as soon as practicable, and for now we continue to operate as normal," end of quote. The question, therefore, Madam Speaker, as you usually put to us, the question, therefore, is no longer whether, but it is when. Madam Speaker, as I draw to a close in my intervention, let me highlight a couple of facts warranting comment. It must be said that the judiciary, the office of the DPP, and my office have clearly been heard, and measures are afoot in the budget to provide us with more staff and upgraded infrastructure, showing a commitment to better access to justice. Madam Speaker, a budget is announced in this House in the space of an afternoon, but it is given effect in the months that follow through the patient and glamorous work of implementation. A measure announced is not a measure delivered. Between the announcement and the achievement, stands a body of legal and institutional labour that must be carried out with care if the promise made to the people is to become the protection they enjoy. For in the end, Madam Speaker, this is the quiet truth of every budget. Its figures are given life only by the law that stands behind them. The maternity protections we have announced, the safeguards against financial crime we have strengthened, the institutions we have undertaken to renew, each of these will succeed or fail upon the quality of the legal work that follows. That work my office will discharge, as it has always sought to, without fanfare, but without fault, in the service of the Assembly and of the State and of the citizens of Mauritius. With these words, Madam Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, I rise to support this budget at a defining moment, shaped not by economic comfort, but by the realities we inherited and our determination to confront them with responsibility, solidarity, efficiency, and social justice. When MSM came to power in December 2014, public sector gross debt stood at 238 billion rupees, or 59.5% of GDP. By June 2024, it has soared to 559.1 billion, representing 83.4% of GDP. In 10 years, they added more than 321 billion to the national debt, more than doubling the burden passed on to the people and future generation. They plundered and looted the country. They bled the country white. They kept on plucking the fruit without watering the plant. They kept on milking the cow without feeding the cow. And the end result, the economy collapsed. We now know that SBM, Mobank, Silverbank, and the DBM wrote off 25 billion during MSM's tenure. This is appalling. Where did that money go and who benefited? We know about the MIC saga, where billions were given to political protégés, secret circles of families, and cronies. Maharajiva benefited from billions of rupees. In Betamax, they lost more than 6 billion rupees. And at the same time, there was one particular group of companies. They lost over 2 billion rupees for having cancelled the contract. After repeated downgrades under MSM, Mauritius were brought dangerously to closed junk status by Moody's, yet they claim to have worked wonders. Madam Speaker, this was a disastrous economic inheritance of our government received in December 2024. Madam Speaker, on Monday, the leader of opposition borrowed a famous dialogue from the Bollywood to mock the Prime Minister. But today, another Hindi saying is more appropriate. Ulta chor kotwal ko dante, meaning the thief turned around and scolded the policeman. Those who created the problem now...
Say that again. The chief?
The thief, the robber, turns around and scolds the policeman.
Okay.
This is what happened exactly. Those who created the problem now accuse those who are trying to correct those problems. He delivered Gabbar Singh's words with the same swagger and confidence. As the saying goes, birds of the same feather flock together. But he forgot that Gabbar Singh's arrogance could not save him when the moment of reckoning came. Neither could political swagger save MSM in November 2024. His party failed to win a single directly elected seat, and he returned to this house only through the best loser system. Madam Speaker, since he has chosen the language of Gabbar Singh against the Prime Minister, let me ask him, kitne aadmi the? The answer is 0 le 60. That is the reason. After that verdict, perhaps he should now ask his own leader. He should ask his leader, Ab tera kya hoga Pravinwa? What will happen to you, Pravin? You have to answer. Madam Speaker, it is very easy to print money, very easy to print 181 billion rupees and distribute it. It is easy to increase pensions, double and triple pensions, and to grant all kinds of allowances. It is very easy to take decisions that are popular today and receive applause. It is so easy to be generous with taxpayers' money. It is equally easy to criticize It is easy to stand in the House and criticize the Prime Minister. It is easy to go on radio programs, to write on social media, to post on Facebook, and to attack decisions that demand sacrifice. Criticism is always easier than responsibility. As Sir Sagar Ramgulam used to say, Lalang penalizo, it can go any way. But leadership is not about choosing the easy path. Leadership is about choosing the right path. Madam Speaker, one religious book, Kathopanishad, which is very popular, teaches us that every leader is confronted with two choices. One is called prayer, that is the pleasant and the attractive part. And Shreya means the good and the righteous path. The pleasant path offers immediate gratification and applause. The good path often demands sacrifice, courage, and perseverance. The wise Upanishad tells, choose the good over the pleasant. The right path is narrow, narrow to tread at the edge of a razor. The easy and popular option was available. The politically convenient option were there. But the Prime Minister chose not what was pleasant, but what he believed was good and necessary for the country. That, Madam Speaker, is a difference between seeking popularity and exercising leadership. The Prime Minister chose not to think about next election. He chose to think about the next generation. He chose not to protect his popularity, but to protect the future of the country. Madam Speaker, I ask a simple question. Throughout the political history of Mauritius, which leader would have dared to take such a difficult but important decision? Which politician would have accepted the political cost of such an unpopular but necessary reform in the national interest? What is popular is not necessarily right, and what is right is not necessarily always popular. Very few would have dared where angels fear to tread. Very few, if any, would have accepted the consequences. And for that, we must give credit where credit is due. Great politicians, statesmen look for breakthrough, while petty politicians thrive on breakdowns. Good politicians strategize, dirty politicians dramatize. Good politicians dreams, petty politicians schemes. Politically speaking, some of these decisions may be unpopular, but the Prime Minister doesn't govern according to opinion polls only. He doesn't calculate electoral advantages. He doesn't ask himself what would be popular. He asks himself what was necessary. He could have chosen the easy path, the road of applause, comfort, and political convenience. Instead, he chose the difficult road, the road of responsibility, courage, and honesty. This is what we call true statesmanship. Madam Speaker, the people of Mauritius will, in the years ahead, reap the fruit of this vision, courage, and the difficult decision taken today. Those results may come much sooner than the sayers and prophet of dooms would have us believe. Madam Speaker, Abraham Lincoln used to describe democracy as government of the people, by the people, for the people. A government that is truly for the people must also have the humility to listen. As the former President of the United States rightly stated, the ear of the leader must ring with the voice of the people. The Prime Minister has demonstrated precisely that quality. When genuine concerns were expressed, he listened, reflected, and responded. That is not weakness. It is responsible, compassionate, and people-centered leadership. A strong leader is one who guides, not misguides. A strong leader is one who leads, not misleads. He does not place personal pride above the people. He has the courage to tackle difficult decisions, but also the wisdom to reconsider when the voice of the population is heard. The Prime Minister has shown that leadership is not about defending a position at all costs. It is about placing the welfare, concerns, and peace of mind of Mauritian families above ego and political pride. Madam Speaker, we must salute the Prime Minister for having the courage to begin reform at the very top. For too long, politicians ask population to make sacrifices while preserving their own privileges. This Prime Minister has placed principle before privilege and demanded from the political class the same discipline that he expected of the nation. Members of the National Assembly will no longer automatically qualify for a parliamentary pension at the end of the term. Instead, the standard pension age will be aligned to that of citizens at 65, a bold and principled demonstration of political self-restraint. Multiple non-contributory pensions will be abolished, while members of parliament will be limited to one duty-free car per mandate instead of one every 3 years. This, Madam Speaker, is responsible governance. The Prime Minister is not merely asking the population to contribute. He's ensuring that reform and sacrifice begin with the political class at the top. This is leadership by example. This is justice in action. Madam Speaker, at the time of slower global economic growth, rising costs, geopolitical instability, and climate-related threats and growing pressure on public finances, this government has made a clear political choice to invest in healthcare. We have chosen to rebuild. We have chosen to modernize. We have chosen to place people at the center of health policy. We have chosen to make healthcare a fundamental pillar of social justice, because no Mauritian should ever be denied treatment because of poverty or of their social status. Government health expenditure per capita has increased from $274 23-24 budget to $342 in this budget, an increase of nearly 30%. This significant increase reflects the priority that the Prime Minister accords to healthcare and recognizes the important work carried out by the Ministry since November 2024. I wish to thank doctors, nurses, medical, paramedical professionals, and all members of the staff for their dedication and commitment. As the Prime Minister highlighted in his speech, life expectancy in Mauritius stagnated between 2019 and 2024, while healthy life expectancy also, according to WHO data, declined. Since November 2024, my ministry has begun reversing years of deterioration, and through sustained investment, stronger services and considerable efforts to improve the quality of care across the public health system. The progress achieved is encouraging, but we recognize that much remains to be done. This budget provides us with the means to accelerate that transformation. Madam Speaker, Mahatma Gandhi reminded us that the future depends on what we do in the present. Tomorrow's harvest depends upon today's plowing and sowing. But if for fear of bad weather, the farmer doesn't plow at the right moment, he may not have a good harvest. It is therefore through decisions that we take today, the services we strengthen, and the investment we make, that we build a healthier Mauritius for generations to come. Madam Speaker, for too long, public health infrastructure was neglected completely. Essential equipment remained unrepaired, and the public system was deliberately weakened while private healthcare flourished. One example I give you, if you go to the hospitals, you will find most of their equipment of 14, 15, 16 years old. That is the reason of all the breakdown, because those fools who are in power, only they were playing the dance of kukuruku. They did not do anything. Not a single instrument, not a single equipment was replaced. Now we have started the replacement. That will take some time. The public system was deliberately weakened while private health care flourished throughout the country. The private sector became so lucrative that former politicians and advisors jumped in the fray in that business because they had to make money. When patients go to a doctor, the patient will never discuss about the fees because he wants his life to be saved, and those crooks knew very well. That is the reason why you have got mushrooming of private hospitals in the country, because you know that is a money minting machine. Not only that, even a former Minister of Health, he was also seeking to establish a private clinic. It's so easy to mint money on the body, on dead corpses. Those shaping public health policy have become today proprietors of private health facilities. Madam Speaker, when you took office, it was not only patients who needed care. The ministry was itself in ICU. We inherited over 2 billion rupees in unpaid liabilities, including foreign hospital bills, overtime payments. Not only that, even we had garages where we owed money. They refused to repair our machines. They refused to provide us wheels, and I was told that even ambulances will not be given diesel and fuel. That was the case at that time when we took over. Madam Speaker, they enjoyed the banquet and left the bill for incoming government to settle. Their philosophy was simple. Jab tak loot sako looto, till the time you can go on looting, because this is public property. So why will you loot? Not the private. Public is yours. Loot. This is what they were doing. That was their philosophy. We rejected that philosophy. Healthcare is not a commodity. Illness is not a business opportunity, and patients are not clients to be exploited. Quality healthcare is a fundamental right, and public hospitals must remain the backbone of a fair and human society. Madam Speaker, the MSM continues to portray its management of COVID-19 as a success. The fact tells a very different story. I have seen on the TV, I won't name the lady, I respect her age. She was making publicity for MSN and telling, look, the way my son has looked after COVID, it was a miracle. I'll tell you the miracle. Based on average mortality in 2019 and 2020, Mauritius recorded nearly 4,000 additional deaths in 2021 and 2022, while only around 1,000 COVID-19 related deaths were officially reported. 4,000 additional deaths, and public was made unaware, was kept in the dark. Where did the remaining excess deaths come from? We cannot forget the 12 dialysis patients who were left to die following the outbreak at New Suivez Hospital. A fact-finding committee identified serious shortcomings, yet the former government refused to release the report, denying grieving families the truth, respect, and accountability they deserve. I have read the report. It's really strange. You never expected that to happen in a country where they were left to die, and there was no treatment was given to them. Only food was thrown from outside to those patients. This is what happened. And let me also remind the House that the closure of our borders was also delayed to allow persons close to former regime to conveniently enter the country. I seem to remember that. At a time when every hour mattered, every minute mattered, political privilege was placed above public safety. As the saying goes, "Desh jaye bhaad mein, mera parivar rahe aad mein." Let the country go to the dogs, but let my family remain in security. That was the policy which that government adopted. While ordinary citizens were confined to their homes, the former minister became embroiled in the notorious Kukuruku controversy. We also remember the infamous saga, the infamous state start party during the COVID-19. That was the start party during the COVID-19 pandemic, where strict sanitary protocols were still in force, and senior MSM ministers were desecrating the sanctity of Ganga Talab. Wine, wealth, women, that were their motto at that time. The pandemic further left behind serious procurement controversies. The Mulnipuhavia, when people were dying on one side, and these people were fattening themselves with the money of the government. The Mulnipuhavia affair, undelivered, this is very serious, Madam, very serious. The Mulnipuhavia affair, undelivered vaccine doses, and 77.9 million paid in advance for ventilators that failed to meet requirements and were never used. And those ventilators, they are lying outside in Europe, and our government, we are paying rental for them. And the matter is now in the court. The financial consequences of these shortcomings have been substantial. More than 15 million worth of Mulnupiravir expired before it could be utilized, while expired COVID-19 vaccines resulted in an additional loss of approximately 214 million rupees. Furthermore, records from electronic inventory management system indicate that expired pharmaceutical and medical supplies amounted to approximately 213 million during the period from January 2020 to August 2023. Even today, this budget we are going to vote has to provide 277 million for outstanding vaccine claims, despite the former government have imposed 2 rupees levy on every liter of petrol and diesel specifically to finance vaccine. Where has that money gone? We don't know. The people paid at the pump, yet they left the bill. People paid at the pump, they left the bill for this government to settle. Madam Speaker, this is not a success story. This is a shameful legacy. Madam Speaker, allow me to highlight some of the achievements of my ministry during the year 25-26. In just 1 year, our health services recorded 9,426,638 contracts between public and health services, 4,708,284 outpatient attendances, 177,665 hospital admissions, 53 333 surgical procedures, 15 850 533 pathological tests, 924 372 radiological examinations, 233 858 dialysis sessions. Firstly, for years, the Suivez Center, initiated by the present Prime Minister, remained the country's only comprehensive diabetes facility. He had invited a professor, renowned professor from England, to come to train our nurses how to deal with diabetic patients. We have now, unfortunately, those fools and ruffians, once they took power, they stopped everything, and the professor had to go, and the whole group was disbanded, and all those highly trained professionals were spread throughout the country. Nothing was done. We have now corrected this long-standing imbalance with dedicated diabetes and vascular health centers operating at Flac Trijolie Mediclinic, G2 Hospital, and the Floreal Mediclinic. Secondly, the trauma and emergency departments are the front doors of our hospitals and must be led by trained specialists empowered to act swiftly. While specialists in emergency medicine were available since 2021, the former government failed to make our emergency services at par with international standard. We are correcting that failure by setting up specialized trauma and emergency units in all major regional hospitals, improving triage, emergency response, and patient care. Thirdly, Mauritius records around 4,000 strokes each year. Yet for years, Victoria Hospital remained the country's only dedicated stroke unit. A mission report on the establishment of a national stroke care service by Professor Siban and Combs in 2024 remain in the drawer. Madam Speaker, how many patients died or became disabled because no action was taken? This was real criminal. We have acted where former government failed, with the stroke unit now operational in SSR Hospital and specialized stroke services being extended to all regional hospitals, because in stroke care, every minute, every second can mean difference between recovery, disability, and death. Fourthly, as Mauritius becomes an aging society, we have moved from years of neglect to modern and dignified care, thanks to the Prime Minister who had been behind this, with dedicated male and female acute care for elderly wards open in 2025 at SSR Hospital and New Flag Hospital, providing coordinated multidisciplinary support for frailty, reduced mobility, chronic diseases, cognitive impairment, and other complex needs. These services will now be progressively extended to other regional hospitals, because those who helped build our country deserve care adapted to their needs, delivered with dignity and respect. Fifth, we have corrected a serious regional inequality in cardiac care. For years, patients from the south requiring urgent angiography had to be transferred elsewhere, with 1,026 patients referred from Jawaharlal Nehru Hospital between 2020 and October 2025. How many patients died or suffered complications because they could not be transferred for urgent angiography? That was also criminal. This neglect is even more indefensible because the hospital served the region represented by the former Minister of Health. If he could not provide this life-saving service to his own region, how can he claim to have left behind a satisfactory health system? A cardiac catheterization laboratory is now operational at Jawaharlal Nehru, while another is being developed at New Flag Hospital, delivering life-saving cardiac services region by region where the former government failed to act. Madam Speaker, beyond these major reforms, the ministry has recorded a series of important achievements during the year, including establishment of a breast clinic at Sasisagar Ramgulam and New Flag Hospital, providing a dedicated one-stop service for detection, diagnosis, and management of breast disease. Second, operationalization of the renal transplant unit at Jawaharlal Nehru Hospital, thanks to the support with the Government of India, and 12 kidney transplants were successfully carried out locally this year, the highest number in a decade, with 100% success rate. Creation of first clinical trial unit in public sector, advancing research driven and patient-centered, and that too thanks to the support of the Prime Minister. Launch of the free 24/7 hotline 146, giving the public direct access to information, guidance, assistance, and a channel to feedback for feedback and complaints. The new Subramaniam Bharati Eye Hospital has been completed and made operational. More than 900 patients have benefited from overseas treatment scheme. Internationally renowned specialists have performed more than 350 complex and high-precision surgical procedures in Mauritius free of charge, while transferring valuable expertise to our local teams. Opening of an advanced clinical imaging unit and introduction of advanced cancer diagnosis, including PET, CT, and SPECT CT scan at NCC. Madam, these are not promises. These are concrete results. When we assumed office in November 2024, the e-health project was severely stalled, confronted by major implementation difficulties and lacking direction. It was so difficult, it was almost a dead horse that we were flogging. But together with the support of the Minister of IT, we took decisive actions to salvage the project and gradually bring it back on the track. To prepare our workforce for this transformation, a dedicated healthcare innovation and artificial intelligence unit will be established under Digital Health Agency to provide healthcare professionals and future clinical leaders with training in artificial intelligence. The DHA will progressively explore the use of artificial intelligence, computer vision, and big data within the public healthcare. We will examine opportunities in telemedicine, remote specialist support, robotic-assisted surgery, and other advanced clinical technologies. Technology will not replace doctors, nurses, or clinical judgment. It will equip our professionals with better tools, improve efficiency, and support safer, faster, and more personalized care. Madam Speaker, I now turn to the measures announced for our health services. In a nutshell, this budget rebuilds a healthcare workforce, strengthens specialized training, brings international expertise to public hospitals, invests in prevention and health literacy, re-engineer diabetes care, modernizes infrastructure, strengthens laboratory capacity, expands dialysis and stroke services, promotes environmentally sustainable vector control, strengthens waste regulation and infectious disease surveillance, establishes centers of excellence, develops clinical research, prepares professionals for artificial intelligence, places patients and accountability at the center of healthcare governance. This budget is the program of rescue, of reconstruction and renewal. It will strengthen our workforce, modernize care, and shift our health system from reaction to prevention. Madam Speaker, we will recruit 2,220 medical and paramedical personnel to ease pressure on staff, improve patient safety, reduce waiting times. We will invest in specialized training in anesthesia, critical care, radiology, emergency medicine, and other priority fields. 1 week of Old Flag Hospital will be converted into a rehabilitation center for victims of drug addiction. They are not lost causes. They are our sons, daughters, brothers, and sisters who deserve care, dignity, and a second chance to rebuild their life. I am sure the Prime Minister will receive the blessing of those parents. This budget will not only repair the damage of the past, it will build a stronger and more resilient public health service for the future. Madam Speaker, a transformative measure in this budget is a 40 million visiting doctor scheme, bringing internationally recognized specialists into our hospitals to deliver advanced treatment, reduce overseas referrals, and transfer expertise to our health professionals. As I am speaking today, 2 eye surgeons from India are helping to clear our waiting list of cataract operations. They are operating on patients neglected for many years. As part of this scheme, my ministry is working on the visit of Professor Nizam Mahmood, a British professor of transplant surgery, and his team to Mauritius from September of this year to May 2027. The primary aim would be for training our surgeons and other healthcare personnel and for setting up of a national renal transplant program. Cancer cases are increasing by leaps and bounds. We are facilitating the visit of foreign specialists to perform very complex surgeries in Mauritius. Up till now, more than 25 such surgeries have been carried out. We are reforming hospital governance through Regional Health Advisory Board with patient representatives and professional hospital managers to strengthen efficiency, accountability, and customer care while allowing doctors to focus on clinical leadership and patient care. The credit for this measure goes to the Prime Minister. Madam Speaker, this budget turns prevention into action through a national health literacy program in schools and 40 million rupees investment to re-engineer diabetes prevention and treatment. Maintaining the status quo is not an option. We will strengthen early detection, improve the management of prediabetes, prevent complications, modernize treatment pathways. Madam Speaker, government is investing 1.5 million to modernize healthcare infrastructure, including a new Sir Shivsagar Ramgulam hospital with research facilities at Pamplemousse. After a decade of neglect, we will give this growing region the modern hospital it deserves. They neglected that hospital deliberately because apparently that hospital happens to fall in constituency number 5, the constituency of our Prime Minister. A new national health laboratory will improve the accuracy and timelessness of nearly 15 million tests annually. A dedicated dialysis unit at ENT hospital will expand access for patients with kidney failure, while a new interventional neuroradiology service will provide advanced local treatment for acute stroke and aneurysm. In stroke care, every minute matters. These investments will save lives, reduce disability, and lessen dependence on overseas treatment. Madam Speaker, Mauritius faces an exceptionally high burden. You know, the PM has given me so much in my ministry. I'm bound to inform the whole country what we have received. I need only a few minutes more, Madam. Mauritius faces an exceptionally high burden of obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and kidney complications. These interconnected conditions require an integrated response. Government will therefore establish a center of excellence in cardiometabolic care and research, bringing together prevention, early diagnosis, advanced treatment, and research. It will also provide dedicated women's health services for hormonal and metabolic conditions. The center will serve as an exclusive public platform for clinical trials involving public patients, supported by a national network across our health institution. To the Prime Minister's personal initiative, the Hayter Institute of London has provided 29 million rupees, while the government will match this confidence with a further 30 million rupees for research into non-communicable diseases. We are bringing research, innovation, advanced care within the reach of public patients, while positioning Mauritius as a regional center of medical excellence. Madam Speaker, Mauritius will establish Africa's first Ayush Center of Excellence and the first outside India, another pioneering development on this government. I'm happy to announce that construction will start this year. This is not about replacing modern medicine. It is about integrating Ayurveda, yoga, and complementary care within a scientific, ethical, and properly regulated framework, particularly for prevention and lifestyle-related diseases. The center will bring clinical care, training, research under one roof, including 100-bed hospital, panchakarma and diagnostic services, outpatient care, physiotherapy, dedicated facilities for yoga and meditation. It will also provide education, quality testing, referral services for complex Ayurvedic treatment. Developed as a modern, accessible, and environmentally sustainable institution, the center will expand preventive and holistic care for Mauritians while positioning our country as a regional hub for Ayush training, research, and wellness. Madam Speaker, we have also recorded important progress in child and maternal health. Infant mortality fell down from 14.5 per thousand births during 1919 to 24 to 11.6 in 2025. Under 5 mortality declined from 15.5 to 12.5 per thousand. The maternal mortality ratio decreased from 0.5 during 2019-2024 to 0.23 in 2025. New HIV cases among Mauritians fell from 549 in 2025 to from 549 in 2024 to 491 in 2025. Madam Speaker, the previous government failed to meet the target set in its own health sector strategy for 2019 to 2024. The improvement achieved in 2025 didn't happen by chance. They reflect sustained action, professional discipline, and commitment of our healthcare workforce. I thank our doctors, nurses, midwives, pharmacists, laboratory and allied health professionals, attendant administrative staff, and every worker who contributes to patient care. Madam Speaker, climate change and urbanization are increasing the threat of vector-borne and emerging infectious diseases. such as dengue, Ebola, and Mpox. Yet, despite growing insecticide resistance from 2023, the former government continued to rely excessively on fumigation without an effective strategy. The sterile mosquito facility at QPIP was left at a dilapidated state. We have changed the course. The sterile mosquito facility at QPIP has been rehabilitated, an additional capacity established at SSRN Hospital, and nearly 2 million sterile mosquitoes released between January and May 2026. Madam Speaker, the 2022 nutritional survey has already exposed alarming levels of obesity and pre-diabetes among adolescents, yet the previous government failed to work. We have responded with the National Obesity Action Plan and the Acceleration Roadmap to Stop Obesity 2025 to 2030, mobilizing school, families, communities, health professionals as well. Madam Speaker,
Minister,
yes.
I'm
now concluding, Madam.
Yes.
So, except I have just to say that as far as the storage of essential medicines are concerned, former government didn't do anything. Now we are looking at it, and I hope that we will do the needful. And at the same time, we have got the Swiss government. In conclusion, I will say we have inherited a health system under immense pressure, shortages, deteriorating infrastructure, delayed projects and services approaching breaking point. But we refuse to be paralyzed by that inheritance. Even in difficult economic circumstances, we are investing because the cause of continued neglect will be far greater. Failure to invest means more disease, exhausted staff, delayed diagnosis, unsafe care, and continued dependence. This budget is therefore not expenditure for its own sake. It is an investment in human life, national resilience, and the future of every Mauritians. We do not pretend that years of deterioration can be reversed. Rebuilding will require discipline, persistence, accountability, and cooperation of healthcare professionals and the population. But the direction is clear. We are moving from neglect to investment, from fragmented services to coordinated care, from treatment to prevention, from outdated infrastructure to modern facilities, and from technological delay to responsible innovation. The population has spoken, healthcare workers have spoken. This government has listened. We will rebuild confidence, support our workforce, protect the vulnerable, invest in science, research and innovation. We will prepare our public health service not only for today's challenges, but for the needs of the future generation. That is responsible government, that is social justice. Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Minister, please debate with regard to the appropriation bill.
No worry, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I can't. So let me start with first wholeheartedly congratulate the Honourable Prime Minister for presenting a budget which demonstrates courage, vision and responsibility. At a time when many countries continue to face economic uncertainty, geopolitical tensions, and increasing fiscal pressures, this government has chosen the path of responsibility, reform, and resilience. This budget is not merely an exercise in balancing revenues and expenditures. It is a roadmap for the future. It is a budget that seeks to strengthen economic recovery, promote social justice, and at the same time restore fiscal sustainability. It is a budget that balances economic ambition with financial discipline and lays the foundation for a stronger, more inclusive, and more sustainable Mauritius for our present and future generation. Madam Speaker, when this government assumed office, it inherited an economy burdened by deep structural weaknesses and a public finance situation that had been severely weakened by years of irresponsible management and a lack of seriousness in addressing the growing fiscal imbalance. The previous government adopted a laissez-aller attitude towards the deterioration of public finances. Instead of taking difficult but necessary decisions to restore fiscal balance, it chose the easy path of excessive spending and postponement of reforms. The former government failed to appreciate that economic growth cannot be sustained indefinitely without sound fiscal management. They attempted to build economic prosperity on borrowed money and excessive printing and distribution of banknotes. This is neither sustainable nor responsible. Madam Speaker, when listening to the leader of the opposition a few days ago, one would tend to forget that his party governed and mismanaged this country for 10 long years. 10 years during which they allowed public debt to deteriorate and rose to approximately 642 billion rupees, reaching close to 90% of GDP. 10 years during which the country accumulated a trade deficit of more than 203 billion rupees, a budget deficit approaching 10% of GDP, and witnessed a depreciation of the Mauritian rupee of nearly 46% since 2014. The truth is clear. The previous government built an economy increasingly sustained by borrowing, spending, and political expediency rather than genuine wealth creation. And alongside this fiscal deterioration came a series of costly scandals and governance failures which tarnished the reputation of the nation. The Betamax case cost taxpayers approximately 5.6 billion. The unilateral termination of the New Town project resulted in an international arbitration award of approximately 1.9 billion against the state. The Heritage City project consumed millions of rupees in consultancy fees before being quietly abandoned without delivering any tangible benefit to the nation. The BAI collapse remains one of the most damaging episodes in our economic history, requiring billions of rupees of public funds to deal with its consequences, including substantial injections into MOBAC, the National Insurance Company, and the National Property Fund. The State Bank of Mauritius, once regarded as a regional success story, became associated with a series of highly controversial transactions, including toxic loans worth billions of rupees, raising serious questions about governance, oversight, and political interference. Then came the Mauritius Investment Corporation, where billions of rupees of public resources were allocated under circumstances that continue to raise legitimate concerns regarding transparency, accountability, and conflict of interest. But, Madam Speaker, the damage was not only financial. Our democratic institutions were also weakened. We witnessed repeated attacks on the independence and credibility of key institutions, the misuse of institutions for partisan purposes, allegations of political interference, concerns regarding surveillance, restrictions of freedom of expression, and attempts to intimidate critics created a climate that deeply troubled most Mauritians. In November 2024, the people of Mauritius went to vote. They did not vote for a simple change only because they wanted a new government. They voted for a restoration of trust. Trust in public institutions, trust in democratic governance, trust in transparency, accountability, and the rule of law. That is the mission of this government. Our responsibility today is not only to repair the public finances, which were in shambles, which we inherited from the previous government, but also to rebuild the institutions that protect our democracy and safeguard the future of our republic. Madam Speaker, against this background of mismanagement, no government in the world, even with the best intention, could fully redress the situation in just 1.5 years. However, the first budget sowed the seed for a gradual economic recovery. Public debt has started to decline, falling from around 90% of GDP in 2024-2025 to an estimated 87.8% in 2025-2026. At the same time, the unemployment rate fell to 5.7% in 2025, reflecting an improvement in labor market conditions. Madam Speaker, history has shown us that in such difficult moments, solidarity among members of the government is a sine qua non condition in order to succeed. I'm sure that on this side of the House, we all have only one objective and mission: to put the country back on track by the end of our mandate. Madam Speaker, we, the MMM, have a double mission. First, to prove to the country that we can work in a government collegially, in a cordial environment, to achieve something noble for the country. And secondly, that we do not run away when the tide is high. It is in difficult moments that we need to put our resources together to succeed. We want to make the country forget that in 4 different occasions, the MMM left, but this time we said no. In 1982, after 9 months in 1993, after 60-0, the MMM left the government. 1991, again in 1993, the MMM left the government after 1.5 years. 1995, again in 1997, left the government. But this time, 2024, when we were asked to leave the government, MMM stayed in the government because we have a mission for the people, we have an ambition for our country, we know the moment is difficult, and this is not the time to run away. This is the time to stay in government and to help to redress the situation together with our colleagues in the alliance. This is what we are doing, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we can see these days the loup-garou petit à la tête, coming to promise that they will revert back to the BRP as before. Once again, they are proving how they are greedy for power, prepared to jeopardize the economy of the country. All reasonable persons know that the BRP in its actual form is unsustainable, except the MSM and their acolytes. Madame la Présidente, pense-t-on réellement que nous sommes des personnes insensibles, sans cœur, qui souhaitent faire souffrir nos aînés? Non, Madame la Présidente, ce que nous faisons aujourd'hui, c'est protéger les générations futures afin qu'elles n'aient pas à supporter un fardeau financier supplémentaire devenu insoutenable. L'honorable Premier ministre, le Dr Navin Amlam, ainsi que le gouvernement ont démontré qu'ils sont à l'écoute de la population. À la suite de la présentation du budget, le MMM a rencontré le Premier ministre afin de lui faire part des préoccupations exprimées par de nombreux citoyens. Celui-ci n'est pas resté insensible à ces représentations et a décidé de suspendre l'application du mécanisme de means testing. Et aujourd'hui, à la suite de la PNQ, il a confirmé que le means testing a été définitivement abandonné. C'est cela, gouverner dans le dialogue, écouter, consulter et ajuster lorsque cela s'avère nécessaire. C'est l'exact opposé de l'arrogance et de la fermeture qui ont trop souvent caractérisé la gouvernance précédente. L'honorable Premier ministre, le Dr Navin Ramlam, a démontré une fois de plus ce que signifie un véritable leadership d'État. Lorsque des inquiétudes se sont manifestées concernant certains aspects de la réforme des pensions, notamment le mécanisme de ciblage basé sur les revenus, il n'a pas fait la sourde oreille. Il a écouté Il a compris les préoccupations exprimées par les pensionnés, les travailleurs, les familles et les organisations de la société civile, et il a agi. La décision de suspendre la mise en œuvre du means testing n'est pas un signe de faiblesse. C'est au contraire un signe de force et de confiance. Les dirigeants faibles refusent d'écouter parce qu'ils craignent de reconnaître que certains ajustements peuvent être nécessaires. Les dirigeants forts écoutent parce qu'ils comprennent que le gouvernement est au service du peuple. Le leadership ne consiste pas à s'entêter, il consiste à assumer ses responsabilités. Le Premier ministre a démontré qu'il est déterminé à réformer un système devenu financièrement insoutenable, tout en demeurant profondément attentif aux préoccupations légitimes de nos concitoyens. Toute réforme majeure nécessite les ajustements en cours de route. C'est cela la sagesse. C'est cela la maturité politique. A country cannot spend money it does not have indefinitely. We cannot continue increasing expenditure while pretending demographic realities do not exist. Mauritius is aging. People live longer. The number of pensioners continue to increase, while the number of active workers financing the system grows much more slowly. This is proven from actual reports. These are facts, Madam Speaker, not political opinions. The previous government knew these realities. They had access to the same demographic data and financial projections, yet they refused to act. Why? Because they preferred postponing difficult decisions and leaving the bill to future generations. This government, however, chose responsibility over populism. Madam Speaker, the pension system has become unsustainable. Doing nothing was simply not an option. Without reform, future governments would have been forced to choose between massive tax increases, excessive borrowing, or crippling cuts in essential public services. That would have been irresponsible. That would have been unfair to our children and grandchildren. But unlike what the opposition wants the population to believe, this government did not simply implement reform and walk away. We listened, we consulted, we adjusted. Just as we did last year, we introduced robust support mechanism to protect those directly affected. The income support scheme was established to assist those reaching the age 60 during the transition period. Initially set at 10,000 per month and subsequently increased to 10,370. This measure represents billions of rupees of direct support. More than that, pensions and social benefits were increased by 3.7% to hundreds of beneficiaries as from 1st January when wage compensation were being granted to workers of the country. Unlike the previous government, which for a period of 7 years did not compensate the rise in the cost of living for our elders. We compensated in January 370 rupees all pensioners got for their compensation. That is not abandonment. That is responsible reform combined with genuine social protection. Le leader du MSM a fait une conférence de presse hier, Madame la Présidente. Entendre le leader du MSM affirmer qu'il n'a jamais touché à la pension relève d'un véritable chef-d'œuvre d'amnésie politique. La mémoire semble lui faire cruellement défaut. Heureusement, les gentils du ministère des Finances, elles ne pratiquent pas l'amnésie sélective. Permettez-moi donc de lui rafraîchir la mémoire en citant ses propres écrits officiels dans le budget 2004-2005, noir sur blanc. I quote, "A second fundamental reform that this budget introduces is the targeting of government transfers. Government transfers are simply not sustainable if they are universal and open-ended. This puts a limit on our capacity to do more for the poorer segment of the population. I believe that this is an issue that calls for a bold decision. I am therefore implementing this year a targeted approach to basic pensions. As from October 2004, payment of basic retirement pension will be limited to persons with monthly income not exceeding 20,000 rupees. However, there will be a tapering of benefits for those with monthly income in the range of 6,000 to 20,000 rupees. Targeting for the basic pensions will be introduced as from January next. The National Pension Act will be amended accordingly. End of quote. Voilà ce que disait alors le ministre des Finances de l'époque. Il ne s'agit ni d'une rumeur, ni d'une interprétation. Ce sont ses propres paroles consignées dans un document budgétaire officiel. Monsieur l'ancien Premier ministre, vous pouvez tenter de réécrire l'histoire devant les caméras. Vous pouvez essayer d'effacer les faits de la mémoire collective, mais les faits sont têtus. Les documents officiels le sont encore davantage. La vérité est simple. Le principe du ciblage des pensions aujourd'hui, dénoncé avec tant d'indignation, a été envisagé et défendu par ceux-là même qui prétendent aujourd'hui n'avoir jamais voulu y toucher. Madam Speaker, before I proceed further, I would like to share with this House the progress already made by this government. In a short period of time, we have delivered tangible results for our people despite the catastrophic legacy of previous government. We have completed numerous road projects across every constituency, resurfacing roads, constructing new lanes, and improving the riding quality of our national network. Madam Speaker, when roads are improved, we reduce frustration, we improve safety, we help commerce move faster, we help workers reach their workplace more efficiently, we give parents more time with their children, we make communities feel connected rather than neglected. These works may appear local in nature, but their impact is national in purpose. A country is strengthened when every locality feels that it is part of the national development effort. No village should feel forgotten. No community should feel invisible. No citizen should feel that progress belongs only to others. Madam Speaker, let me now come to the drainage infrastructure. The increasing impacts of climate change, particularly more intense rainfall events and associated flood risks, require us to rethink the way we plan and deliver our infrastructure. The Land Drainage Authority of my ministry is being revamped into a strategic institution, playing a central role not only in drainage development but also in national flood risk management and climate adaptation. The budget 2026-2027 reaffirms government's commitment towards resilient and sustainable infrastructure. Continued investment in drainage infrastructure remains a priority, with the objective of reducing flood vulnerability and ensuring safer communities. At the same time, this government recognizes that future challenges require a more integrated approach. Flood management cannot rely solely on conventional engineering solutions. We must combine robust infrastructure with nature-based solutions, allowing us to work with natural systems to manage water more effectively and sustainably. Mauritius is already progressing in this direction through projects incorporating nature-based solutions such as retention ponds. These include initiatives at Cottage, Pointe-aux-Sables, Bossons, Bambou, Martaba, Nouvelle-France, among others. In parallel, government is taking important steps to enhance efficiency and accelerate drainage infrastructure delivery. The National Development Unit will strengthen coordination by prioritizing drainage projects recommended by the LDA and ensuring their assignment to the appropriate implementing agencies for timely execution. Furthermore, to ensure proper integration of infrastructure works, clearance from the LDA will be required before road works that may affect drainage corridors and reserve alignments undertaken. This will strengthen coordination, protect drainage assets, and improve the effectiveness of our investments. The Land Drainage Authority will also be amended to further empower the LDA in delivering its services and supporting its enhanced responsibilities. These measures will reflect government's commitment to strengthening the authority's role as a national reference institution for land drainage and flood risk management. Together, through engineering excellence, innovation, improved coordination, and nature-based solutions, we will continue to build a safer and more resilient nation towards the impacts of flooding. Through the Land Drainage Authority, we have taken the bull by the horns. Out of 801 total applications, including complex historical backlogs left by past administration, our dedicated committees have already successfully resolved and replied to 549 files. That is an impressive 68.5% clearance rate. While 252 applications remain in the process, they are being tackled with absolute priority. This government does not hide challenges, we fix them. We are actively modernizing the LDA to deliver a safer, climate-resilient Mauritius for everyone. The challenge of flooding, Madam Speaker, the challenge of flooding has affected too many communities for too long. We have responded decisively. The National Development Unit and the Drain Infrastructure Construction Limited have completed major drainage projects to strengthen resilience and protect lives, homes, businesses, and livelihoods. I must say, under the previous administration, serious questions were repeatedly raised regarding the governance, transparency, and allocation of contracts at the ICL. Too often, there was a public perception that connections mattered more than competence and that taxpayers were not receiving the accountability they deserve. Today, the ICL is committed to a new culture of transparency, fairness, and good governance. Contracts must be awarded on merit. Public funds must be used responsibly, and every decision must withstand public scrutiny. The era of favoritism and the perception of job for friends is over. Our commitment is simple: transparency, accountability, and results for the people of Mauritius. Madam Speaker, we have also not forgotten our brothers and sisters of Rodrigues, who also suffered from the effects of flooding in March this year. I led a team to take stock of damages incurred. To this end, Madam Speaker, a team from the Geotechnical Unit and the National Development Unit attended the island to submit requirements to mitigate flooding effects, particularly at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Crèvecoeur. Alongside three major projects totaling around 175 million at Quatre Vents d'Adaris, Bétopaz and Pépistache are nearing completion by end of October this year. These drain projects are protecting homes, businesses, and livelihoods. They are protecting dignity. They are protecting peace of mind. Climate resilience is no longer an optional chapter in national development. It is central to the security of our people. The intensity of rainfall, the vulnerability of certain areas, and human costs of repeated flooding require a government that anticipates, plans, and acts. When a drain is built, it may not always attract attention, but for the family that can sleep more peacefully during heavy rain, for shopkeeper who no longer fears damage to stock, for the community that no longer feels abandoned at the first sign of bad weather, that infrastructure has real meaning. Madam Speaker, while we are proud of the progress already achieved, we remain fully conscious of the scale of the task ahead. The budget 2026-2027 gives us the means to accelerate transformation with discipline, sequencing, and purpose. Our priorities are clear, our targets are ambitious, and our commitment is firm. Madam Speaker, we are also strengthening the regulatory framework for minimum building standards and energy-efficient requirements, and we are establishing a maintenance program for government buildings and other assets. Madam Speaker, unlike the previous administration, this government has chosen responsibility over complacency, discipline over populism, and long-term sustainability over short-term political expediency. The budget 2026 clearly demonstrates the determination of this government to restore confidence in the economy while protecting the most vulnerable segments of our society. The government understands that economic growth and fiscal discipline are not mutually exclusive. On the contrary, sustainable growth requires sound public finances. Economic ambition must go hand in hand with financial responsibility. This is precisely the philosophy which underpins this budget. Madam Speaker, one of the pillars of this budget seeks to expand and modernize our economic space. Mauritius has always demonstrated remarkable adaptability. Throughout our history, we have successfully transformed ourselves into from monocrop economy to a diversified and upper middle income economy. However, global competition is intensifying and we must continue to modernize our economic structure. This budget lays the foundation for a new phase of economic transformation by promoting investment, improving infrastructure, and facilitating the emergence of new sectors. Modern infrastructure constitutes a key driver of competition. Roads, ports, airports, and digital connectivity are essential ingredients for economic development. By investing strategically in infrastructure, the government is creating the conditions necessary for sustained growth. Madam Speaker, I will now elaborate on the motorway M4 project. Allow me first and foremost to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to the Honourable Prime Minister for having demonstrated remarkable foresight and unwavering commitment by making provision of 2 billion rupees in this budget to kick-start this major project that will link Fobak to the airport. In times when governments across the world are confronted with difficult choices and competing priorities, this government has once again shown that it possesses the vision, courage, and determination to invest in infrastructure that will generate benefits for generations to come. This is much more than the construction of a new road. This is an investment in the future of our country. It is a strategic infrastructure project that will transform mobility, enhance connectivity, stimulate economic growth, and improve the quality of life of thousands of Mauritians. Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition commented on the M4 project. I must say that on this particular issue, he demonstrated far greater lucidity than some members of the opposition sitting over there. At least he understood the strategic importance of the project. At least he recognized the immense socio-economic benefits that it will bring to the country. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said of the Honourable Adrien Duval and other members of the opposition who continue to question the relevance and even la nécessité de ce projet structurant as they have their own agenda. J'en profite également pour remercier sincèrement le Premier ministre de l'Inde, Sri Narendra Modi ji, ainsi que le gouvernement indien pour leur soutien constant à ce projet d'envergure nationale. Maurice et l'Inde entretiennent une relation privilégiée, fondée sur l'histoire, l'amitié et un partenariat de développement mutuellement bénéfique. J'espère simplement que certains membres de l'opposition ne s'opposent pas à ce projet uniquement parce que son financement provient de l'Inde. Ce serait particulièrement regrettable. Nous avons parfois l'impression que certains pratiquent un India bashing à géométrie variable. Lorsqu'un financement vient d'ailleurs, il est accueilli avec enthousiasme. Mais lorsqu'il vient de l'Inde, certains deviennent soudainement beaucoup plus exigeants, voire méfiants. Madame Speaker, franchement, comment peut-on...
I'm sorry. Your time is already up, and I see you have a lot to say.
No. I know how to skip.
Navigate.
No, I know how to skip. I've just finished on M4 and then I'll conclude.
Okay.
I'll just finish.
You'll get
on-
another chance to tell us all this.
Yeah. No, I'm just finishing on because info is very important for your connectivity also. Ouais. Madame la Speaker, franchement, comment peut-on sérieusement qualifier ce budget de bas-de-bâté tout en remettant en question l'un des projets d'infrastructure le plus important pour l'avenir de notre pays? Il faut croire que certains ne comprennent toujours pas que le développement économique passe nécessairement par le développement des infrastructures. Ce gouvernement refuse une vision à deux vitesses du développement national. Nous accordons la même importance au développement urbain qu'au développement des régions rurales. Les habitants de l'Est, du Sud, du Nord ou des villages de l'intérieur ont autant droit à des infrastructures modernes et à des opportunités économiques que ceux vivant dans les grands centres urbains. D'ailleurs, l'histoire nous enseigne que les grands projets d'infrastructure ont presque toujours été accueillis par les mêmes critiques. Il fut un temps où certains remettaient en question la construction de l'autoroute M1. Il fut un temps où l'on critiquait également les investissements consentis pour le développement de l'aéroport. Et aujourd'hui, personne ne conteste leur contribution essentielle au développement économique du pays. Madame Speaker, je tiens également à rappeler que le projet de la M4 ne date pas d'hier. Cela fait plus de 20 ans que cette infrastructure figure dans les réflexions stratégiques du pays. Une étude de faisabilité avait déjà été réalisée en 2012. À l'époque, Maurice comptait environ 125 000 véhicules en circulation. Selon les statistiques officielles de décembre 2025, le nombre de véhicules enregistrés sur nos routes dépassait désormais 746 000. Ces chiffres parlent d'eux-mêmes. Ils démontrent que les besoins en matière de mobilité, de connectivité et de désengorgement du réseau routier ont considérablement évolué. La congestion routière n'est plus un problème futur, elle constitue déjà une réalité quotidienne pour les milliers de Mauriciens. La M4 n'est donc pas un luxe, c'est une nécessité. Ce projet aura également un impact économique majeur sur le secteur de la construction qui demeure l'un des principaux moteurs de croissance de notre économie. Chaque grand chantier génère des emplois directs pour les ingénieurs, les techniciens, les géomètres, les architectes, les ouvriers. Il crée également des milliers d'emplois indirects dans le secteur du transport, de la logistique, des matériaux de construction, des services professionnels, de la sous-traitance et des PME mauriciennes. Chaque roupier investi dans une infrastructure de cette ampleur circule ensuite dans l'économie réelle et soutient l'activité de nombreuses entreprises.
Il faut vraiment conclure.
Maintenant, je vais conclure, Madame la Speaker. Je skip tout ça. Harbour Bridge, tout ça, je skip. Ne vous en faites.
Je suis sûre que c'est important. Mais...
Oui. OK. Laissez-moi conclure, Madame la Speaker, for the time which is left for me. I try. Madam Speaker, there are moments when a government must speak plainly to the country. There are moments when leadership cannot hide behind comfort, postpone difficult decisions, or leave tomorrow's generation to pay for yesterday's hesitation. This is such a moment. And this budget rises to that moment, not with hesitation, but with direction, not with slogans, but with substance, not with denial, but with responsibility. It is a budget that says clearly to the country, we will not drift, we will not delay, and we will not mortgage the future of our children for the comfort of the present. We will act, we will deliver, and we will build a stronger Mauritius. That is the spirit in which I support the budget 2027, a budget of courage, discipline, delivery, and national renewal. Madam Speaker, because a budget must never be judged only by the figures it contains, it must be judged by the direction it sets, the confidence it restores, the discipline it imposes, and the hope it gives to the people who look to government not for slogans, but for solutions. For the family managing its monthly expenses, this budget matters. For the entrepreneur seeking space to grow, this budget matters. For the young graduate preparing for a changing economy, this budget matters. For the resident whose home has too often been threatened by flooding, this budget matters. For every citizen who expects government to be serious, disciplined, and present on the ground, this budget matters. That is why this budget is not only a financial document, it is a national commitment. Madam Speaker, when this government assumed office, we inherited more than figures on the balance sheet. We inherited uncertainty, we inherited fragility, we inherited a growing burden on future generations, and we had a choice. Delay reform or confront reality. We choose to act. We choose the harder road. We choose responsibility over convenience. But let us be clear, this is not the destination. This is the beginning of a more disciplined state, the beginning of a more accountable delivery, the beginning of a government that recognizes that every policy must ultimately travel from pages of a budget to the streets, homes, villages, and communities of our country. Because public finance is not an abstract matter. When public finances are weak, ordinary people pay the price. Investment slows, confidence weakens, essential projects are delayed. The vulnerable become more exposed, and the next generation inherits not opportunity but obligation. For all these reasons, Madam Speaker, I fully support this budget and congratulate once again the Honourable Prime Minister for his visionary leadership and unwavering commitment to building a prosperous and sustainable Mauritius. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
If I may, when we prepare speeches which are typed, it's not difficult to know each page how long it takes. It can take between 2, 3, and 4 minutes. So if you want to speak 30 minutes, it's easy to know how many pages you should read. Basically, you're not even supposed to read. You're supposed to debate. Honourable Bulel, I count on you because you're the last speaker today.
I will try to live up to your expectation, Madam. Madam Speaker, it is a tradition, and we have to stick to tradition, to convey our congratulations to the Prime Minister, first among the equals, Leader of the House and Minister of Finance. But it is not because of tradition that I'm conveying my congratulations. It is because he's a man who's daring and who can make change happen. We came to this house not to be applauded, but to get things right. And to get things right, we have to adapt, otherwise we will perish. And it's time for all of us to arise, awake, and stop not till the goals are reached. And for the goals to be reached, we need to put up a common front, to ward off the threats, and to say outright that the only factor in life which remains constant is change. And we have to adapt. I'm not saying that we need, Madam, to have a change to violently disrupt the system. But Prime Minister got the message, and it is a message conveyed by all of us. And we stood together, not only toward threats, but to convey the right signals to a public whose feelings have been whipped by those who are irresponsible and who act irresponsibly. We are here to deliver. We have a clear mandate, and we shall deliver. And in the course of my speech, you will see the difference between them and us. Politics, Madam Speaker, is chivalrous. Today there's no chivalry, there is rivalry. It's not only rivalry, but people who can harm society, who can violently disrupt and provoke social unrest. But we shall not allow any social unrest. We have a clear mandate to govern, and we shall govern with all purpose of intent. Let me also extend my congratulations to Honourable Damery and the team. The good thing with Prime Minister, when we went, of course, have this interactive meeting. In the light of hue and cry, Prime Minister flexed his muscle and conveyed with confidence and conviction the merits of pension reform with a human touch. What is the point of being a human being if you are not humane? I've known Prime Minister since a very long time. Sometimes we agree to disagree, but when it comes to put up a common front, when it comes to stand for values which we cherish, we stand together. And this is the way it should be. And I expect all of us to come together and not to be afraid. We have to defend a government which not only stands for the generations of today, but the generations to come and of tomorrow. And then we'll highlight, Madam Speaker, the bad faith of the previous regime over contribution sociale généralisée and pension reform. During my intervention as leader of the opposition on the 4th June 2020, on the budget debate 2020-2021, and in my motion of disallowance on the 17th November 2020, I raised the following points regarding pension reform of the previous government, in particular regarding contribution sociale généralisée. The first point, that the contribution sociale généralisée was an unfair tax, and certainly not a pension as marketed unfairly by the government which was then in power. And it was the biggest scam by con and rogue regime. At the beginning, Madam Speaker, not many persons knew what the then Prime Minister and Minister of Finance were up to. The then Minister of Finance, shortly after a cabinet meeting on the 22nd, 2020, announced a plan de relance économique, and in a reply to a question from the press, stated that a contribution sociale généralisée had been introduced to narrow the budget deficit of government, pour équilibrer le budget. They never disclosed it was a tax, but this is the naked truth, and this is the blunt truth. That the CSG was unfair, and people contributing a higher amount would receive the same amount as those who would not have contributed to contribution sociale généralisée at all. It was a blatant disregard, disrespect, and discrimination vis-à-vis employees of the private sector. Second, that the National Pension Fund contribution had stopped, and this would cause prejudice to a lot of employees of the private sector. That's what we say in simple language, but they did not pay heed, Madam Speaker. And I would advise all of us to refer to a statement made by Honorable Minister Soubron to the press on the 13th July 2025. Une trahison électorale déguisée en réforme. Fourth, that it would have been in order to restructure the National Pension Fund instead of setting up the contribution sociale généralisée. But it falls flat because their intention was against workers of this country. They work against the interest of workers of this country. They create a wedge and sow a seed of division between those working in public and private sector. And those who had to bear the cut were those who were in the private sector, Madam Speaker. Next, that it would be in order to restructure the National Pension Fund, I've stated, instead of setting up the contribution sociale généralisée. Et le ministre ajoute que si les cotisations n'avaient pas été suspendues, le fonds atteindrait actuellement près de 200 milliards en tenant compte d'un rendement annualisé de 7,5%, le taux moyen enregistré sur les 5 dernières années et d'un apport annuel de 5 milliards en cotisation. Our friend, the Minister of Social Security, was dead right and in line with policy spelled out by this government with vigor, Madam Speaker. At the end of my opening speech of my motion of disallowance of the 11th November 2020, I impressed upon the then government that it was never too late. I asked them to think twice and to reverse a decision which was doing a lot of harm. I insisted that the contribution sociale généralisée was a harm which could be irreparable. It is to be remembered that the pension system which prevailed during the mandate of the last government was a clear example of opacity when it was introduced. It did not go through any process of consultation. There was no consultation. It is a fact that the then Pension Reform Committee had no say in the pension system that prevailed during the period 2019 and 2024. And during the mandate of the last government, from 2019 to 2024, the objective of the contribution sociale généralisée changed drastically to a financial support mechanism as opposed to being the vehicle for an increasing non-contributory pension from 9,000 to 13,500. And the overall result of this dramatic change, as was earlier highlighted by Honorable Patrick Assé-Abaden, is that the CSG had turned out to be lamentably unsustainable, short of 25 billion rupees. There was a heavy price to pay for hoarding, for inflation, for speculation, corruption, and complacency. Figures, Madam Speaker, do not lie, especially if you don't fiddle with the figures, but they are here to be seen by one and all. And let it be heard by one and all that from 2014 to 2024, we didn't have a government. We had a bunch of people running this country like mafiosi, decadent, filthy, corrupt to the bone. And never, ever should they ever come back to this house. I call upon the decency of the electorate to think once, to think twice, but to think positively. We've had the courage to bring fundamental changes because we are preparing the ground, not only for those who are here today, but for those who are coming for the next generation, Madam Speaker. But unlike the MSM-led regime, we are not introducing any additional tax like the contribution sociale généralisée. But we are restructuring the National Pension Fund and turning it into a national pension and provident fund. We also announced as a means test, initially we also announced as a means test for eligibility to the state age pension, the revised BRP. But beyond statistics and gradient, there is also a human factor. And Prime Minister, being humane, paid heed to what he heard. And I know he not only heard, but he also has a clear conscience. Inasmuch as we want to rush things through, but we might as well bring the changes in such a manner that we don't violently disrupt any system. And I say hats off to Prime Minister. There have been hue and cry from the heart of those hard-working people who have retired and saying that the hard-earned contributory and non-contributory pension as taxpayers are sacrosanct. They will fight for the sacrosanctity of their hard work, and we acted collectively, and as a responsible government, we paid heed, and we did not and if we had to bend backwards to pay heed, we certainly did, because we are a responsible government, and and Labour, which is leading the alliance, Madam Speaker, thrives on values of Fabianism. But what did they do in 2004? In 2004, the Labour Party in opposition stood up and fought bitterly against the means test, and the government of the day, led by Mr. Honorable Béranger and Pravin Jagat, were insensitive and indifferent to the outcry of the population. The leader of the opposition put free PNQ on pension reform. The regime was cruel and had an arrogance second to none. There was no discussion at the bar of public opinion, no consultation, and they wanted us to give them our blessings at the threshold of general election. They should have been whole hazelnuts, Madam Speaker. They sent a form to senior citizens who were traumatized and frightened by the threat contained in the form which was circulated, and I read paragraph 5 of the form stated. Any beneficiary who makes a false start, a false or incorrect declaration, shall commit an offence and may be liable to a fine not exceeding 5,000 rupees and to an imprisonment for a term not exceeding 3 months. This is the vast difference between them and us. The Minister of Finance, Mr. Honorable Pravin Jagat, pampered by the then Prime Minister as his younger brother, despite the fact that he was the most controversial Minister of Finance exercising undue influence. And we put an end to it in 2005 when the Labour-led alliance by Navin Ramgoolam won the general election. The voice of the people is being heard and listened to. The Prime Minister and all of us listen and paid heed. Is a man of integrity and put people first. Yes, there is an alternative possible, but there is a risk, and the risk has to be mitigated. The Prime Minister, with full support of his cabinet and all MPs, have acted decisively, and the statement made by Prime Minister is praiseworthy. Chief among the laudable decision is the removal of the means test for eligibility of the state to the state age pension. Prime Minister emphatically stated in his reply to the PNQ that means test is buried fathom deep. A historic commitment of our citizens indeed. As a responsible government, we have acted collectively, but let us be candid, Madam Speaker. It is precisely because you have an aging force that pension policy, diaspora, circular migration, selective migration is being debated, and it has to be debated openly without fear or prejudice. But to stay ahead of the curve, we need growth, productive growth with gainful employment. The enabling environment is being created to attract investment. The budget highlights the potential of existing and emerging sectors. The low-hanging fruits are ready to be picked as the bumper crop is inevitable with a gradual drop in the price of fuel, food, feed, and freight. Notwithstanding the massive support from a caring government to bring down the prices of food and medicine, I've been told that more than 2 billion rupees have been earmarked. The ease of doing business is back. Some people understand want an interest rate to be lowered. The Care Edge Ratings Africa affirms that this budget makes credible provision for productivity through sectoral reform with artificial intelligence as a key enabler. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food Security, Blue Economy and Fisheries is partnering with the Ministry of IT to be more effective. Madam Speaker, we are climbing down from a mountain of debt inherited from a decadent regime that recklessly ripped off the reserves of the Bank of Mauritius. MSM-led regime had a culture of crime, has a culture of crime and corruption. As a responsible government, under the leadership of the Prime Minister, we have embarked on sound macroeconomic management. Public sector debt is projected to fall below 80% of GDP before 2029, notwithstanding the recent oil crisis, the 12% US tariff on import, and the 10 billion lease payments still outstanding from the United Kingdom. I won't highlight what the Attorney General stated in relation to the statement made by the UK Attorney General. But one thing is certain, funding agencies and credit ratings agencies have said loud and clear that our economy is now exhibiting resilience. I'm not saying that we have to take it for granted, relax, enjoy armchair comfortability, and say all is well. No, but the culture of restraint of expenditure should not be ruled out, hence the relevance of the program-based budgeting. The second budget of this government continues on the path of fiscal rebalancing to reduce the yawning gap between revenue and expenditure. Our first budgetary exercise has brought down the fiscal deficit from 67 billion to 47 billion in 2025-2026, or a decrease of 20 billion rupees. Relative to GDP, the deficit fell from 9.3 to 6%, which is without context a remarkable achievement. Madam Speaker, let me say that as from January next year to July, measures to contain the additional deficit of 6.2 billion have to be taken, and starts at the level of each ministry and parastatal bodies. There are tax proposals which are less than palatable, and the Minister of Finance will come up with appropriate budgetary measures to address the shortfall. There will be tax buoyancy from increasing revenue. From a world economy which is bound to grow, Mauritius has to position itself with a new level of preparedness. Madam Speaker, I will now come to my ministry's mandate. No ministry in this government can afford armchair comfort. We are here to deliver. The total allocation for my ministry rises from 4.46 billion in 2025-2026 to 5.164 billion in 2026-2037, an increase of 704 million rupees. The increase is not merely a number. It is a statement of government's unwavering determination to invest in food security, resilience, innovation, and sustainability. And the food security allocation has grown from 1.3 billion to 1.5 billion. The phrase "produce what we eat and eat what we produce" is not a sound bite. It is a natural imperative. Over the last 10 years, more than 20,000 acres of agricultural land have been abandoned or converted to non-agricultural use. This trend must be and will be reversed. During difficult conditions, food crop production, despite difficult conditions, Madam Speaker, food crop production increased by approximately 10% from 159,278 tons in 2024 to 175,122 tons in 2025. The area harvested under open field crops rose by 4.4% from 9,567 to 9,991 hectares. Last year alone, 800 million rupees was invested in grants and subsidies to farmers through FARE, Small Farmers Welfare Fund, and AMB. I appeal, of course, like any other minister, for quick disbursement. But let me come to an issue which is cherished by the Prime Minister, canvassed by Prime Minister. And I can tell Prime Minister we will faithfully implement the 25/35 food security program. This is an absolute national directive. By 2035, Mauritius must produce at least 25% of its food requirements with no dependence on imported inputs. Ambitious, but it is achievable. And it will define our generation's legacy. This morning, I was at Tulsi Government School to have an early harvest. It is a good initiative of Minister of Agriculture, Education, and Rotary Club of Cupid. To achieve 25/35, we cannot operate Food Agricultural Research Extension Institute on the basis of the 2013 Act. The Institute legal mandate must expand horizontally from field extension and agro-processing to logistics, storage, and cross-sectoral business coordination. The FARE Act will be amended accordingly, and Small Farmers Welfare Fund will have to operate under the aegis of FARE to improve efficiency. In parallel, the Food Security and Nutrition Bill is a landmark legislative step, but every great bill needs a strong executive arm. The modernized FARE will serve as that arm, transform from a field extension body into a scientific and commercial spine of food security architecture. A land bank of more than 20,000 acres have been earmarked to increase local production. Guided by our ministry's land suitability map, this bank will match crops to suitable land and incentivize farmers to keep it in cultivation. Prior to 2014, Madam Speaker, Mauritius produced 24,000 tons of potato. By 2024, this figure has collapsed to 14,000 tons. We are addressing the challenges of labor, input costs, and land through a master plan targeting 27,500 tons of potatoes, 21,000 tons of onions, and 2,200 tons of garlic. The Roosevelt Sugar State and Sugar Investment Trust have been called to contribute, and they must deliver in line with best agricultural practices to strengthen food security. Importation of agricultural labor from India is being finalized with a new remuneration order and complementary legislation. By the 15th of July, planters should be able to import additional workforce. The fertilizer envelope for small farmers expanded, with allocation rising from 80 million to 100 million, and biofertilizer rising from 10 million to 13 million. And I thank the Prime Minister for both initiatives. The subsidy on first-class potato seeds from France and Holland has been raised from 50% to 75%. And it is worth noting that regular meetings have been held by the Agricultural Marketing Board to gauge the challenges faced by small planters and other growers. As such, an envelope of 150 million rupees has been provided to cater entire area for potato and onion seeds. Payments to the corporate sector and small planters have started as from today to reach some 500 growers comprising corporate small planters covering an acreage of 1,400 acres. And I want to make it clear there will be no increase in the retail selling price of potatoes and onions. Sugar built this nation, Madam Speaker, but of course one issue that has to be addressed, notwithstanding water stress, land abandonment, and labor scarcity. It's the availability of tractors, and it's time to make sure that we have the fund to acquire the equipment. And I've been told that we are obtaining in all 210 million for the equipment, 35 from this budget, and 175 million from the International Finance Corporation of Mauritius. Madam Speaker, livestock and veterinary services are being revamped. A substantial sum of 207 million, inclusive of 50 million rupees for construction of a state-of-the-art veterinary hospital at Wotton-Berry. This sum will be disbursed. Let me come now to blue economy. As was stated by my colleague, Junior Minister David, the bill is in the pipeline. And blue economy will be the next frontier of development. And I'm glad that the Indian government is going to disburse 1 billion under government-to-government arrangement with India to enable us to modernize our port and to turn it into a regional port. Honorable Lubin highlighted it, and we reinforce it more than once. Some 40,000 vessels ply the southwestern Indian Sea route. A transshipment terminal with container port facilities is not a luxury, it is inevitable. And the multiplier effect from bunkering to dry dock will be immense. And we can say, with not only honesty of purpose, but we are going to make it happen, we can certainly double the blue economy's contribution to GDP from 10 to 20%. And our national blue economy strategy and implementation roadmap 2026-2035 will be ready by July 2026, covering 6 priority areas: sustainable fisheries, aquaculture, seafood processing, ocean tourism, marine transport, marine renewable energy, and marine biotechnology. And as stated earlier, the bill, hopefully, on blue economy will be circulated before October. My ministry remains committed to unlocking the immense potential of blue economy while ensuring the sustainable management and responsible utilization of our marine resources. We are formally positioning Mauritius to develop an indigenous blue economy model, one that simultaneously advances economic prosperity while safeguarding marine ecosystem. In 2025, local fish production reached a record of 37,821 tons, including 1,807 tons from aquaculture. Export of fish and fish products reached 82,644 tons, generating export-only earnings of approximately 50.2 billion rupees. Fish consumption stands at approximately 36 kilos per capita. This sector contributes around 1.5% to national gross value added. I'm not going to highlight all the advantages being extended to fishers, from canot scheme to fishing facilities being extended off lagoon. The fishing scheme has provided 12 million rupees to fishing cooperatives for vessels up to 24 meters. And in financial year 2025, 12 cooperatives received approximately 65 million rupees in government support, and 8 new vessels are expected to join the fleet. And now, with constant breakthrough in technology, fish aggregating devices are equipped with satellite tracking, and we have secured an additional quota, 500 tons of yellow tuna fish, bringing our catch limitation to 10,990 tons for 2027. And with the fleet expansion underway, government is giving serious consideration to a dedicated fishing port to serve approximately 900 annual calls from foreign vessels and our growing local fleet, positioning Mauritius as the premier fisheries and seafood hub of the Indian Ocean. Yes, we also we will make provision for the construction of a fish auction market. And I recall in the past, money was disbursed by Greece up to 25 million rupees, but unfortunately, not much was done. On aquaculture, we will err on the side of caution, and we will make sure that everybody will be on board, notwithstanding projects which will be examined by the Economic Development Board, but of course, no project will take off if it will be implemented if it is not bankable. But to widen the circle, there will be wide discussion with all stakeholders, be they fishers or the NGO, and we'll make sure that in relation to participation, there's a call for fishers to be part of the process. But not, as we say, we'll err on the side of caution, because we have to make sure that we strike the right balance, because our country is a major tourist destination. Strike the right balance to ensure that there's sustainability and environmental safety. Let me, Madam Speaker, conclude by saying by saying that there will be 2 new hatcheries, and this will help us to boost the fisheries sector. 41 billion rupees have been earmarked, and the hatcheries will be at the Albion Fisheries Research Center. I'm not going to talk of Suivez, that has been highlighted by my friend, Minister David, but it's good to recall that the International University of Monaco is pioneering regenerative biomass, and they will be a partner of Mauritius in this process. There is one issue where we need to address. We have a comparative advantage in relation to market access to EU and to Britain especially. In relation to export of our tuna, it is unfortunate that Britain has extended the most favored nation status to countries in Thailand and in the Pacific, which means that we have to compete, but you cannot put in the ring a bantamweight against a heavyweight. This is, we have talked to the UK High Commissioner, both Minister responsible for trade and foreign affairs. We put up a common front, and we also grasped the opportunities to highlight the problem with Mrs. Gonzalez, EU representative of fisheries. So our friends in the private sector can rest assured we are leaving no stone unturned. Madam Speaker, let me conclude. Let me conclude by stating what I said at the beginning. We did not come to this house to be applauded. We came to do what is right. We did not make this decision to win tomorrow's headlines. We made them to secure tomorrow's Mauritius. There is no easy road from weakness to strength. There is no painless passage from death to prosperity. But the passage exists, and we are walking it. This government chose a different path. We chose the harder path. We chose responsibility over popularity and resilience over short-term relief. Yet, as I've stated earlier, these are challenging times. Yes, difficult decisions have had to be made. No one disputes that, but Madam Speaker, there's no courage in telling people only what they wish to hear. True leadership is about guiding the nation through the dark passage, knowing with conviction the light lies ahead. And let me say this plainly, Madam Speaker, and let it be heard across the island. The arc of true leadership bends always towards what is right, not what is easy. Difficulty is not defeat. Sacrifice, Madam Speaker, is not failure. And the people of Mauritius, resilient, wise, strong, understand the difference between a government that flatters them and a government that serves them. And this is the object of the Prime Minister. This is the mission of the Prime Minister. This is why we need to arise awake and stop not and convey the message loud and clear to all our friends. And there's no retreat, no surrender. Message is going to be conveyed, Madam Speaker. We are not governing for next election. We are governing for the next generation. History will be determined by whether we have the courage today to rethink tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Madam Speaker, I move for adjournment of the debate.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Honourable Minister, for respecting the time. The question is now that the debate be adjourned. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. It should have been seconded. I take it Honourable Minister was second. Yes, Honourable Prime Minister.
I move for the adjournment of the House to tomorrow, Friday, the 26th of June at 3 p.m.
Yes, DPM is seconding. Question is that the House be adjourned to Friday, the 26th of June at 3 p.m. 2026, of course. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The House stands adjourned.